So first up, we have apologies. So I'll go to Councillor Michael Duff first, please.
Okay, thank you, Cormac. Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Councillor Warrington.
No apologies, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. No apologies as such. Councillor Deborah Erskine running slightly late. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Garrity.
Thank you, Chair. No apologies from us this evening. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And any from independents or smaller member parties at all? Okay, to take that as a no. Okay, moving on to item 2, to sign minutes and confidential minutes of previous meeting held on the 14th of April, and that was done prior to the start of the meeting. Item 3, declarations of interest. Any declarations? Councillor Warrington up first.
Item 6.1, the licensing. I'm involved in one of the organisations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Garrity.
Thanks, Chair. 6.1, family work related.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Baird.
Item 6.1, Appendix 2, licensing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thornton.
Similarly, Chair, item 6.1, Appendix 2, as a member of a group with an entertainment licence.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Irvine.
Following on from my colleagues, declaration of interest under 6.1 Appendix 2, one of the organised listed for a entertainment licence, Garvin. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McCloughery.
Similar, 6.1, item 2, I'm a member of one of the groupings.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Armstrong.
Chair, similar, yes, to my colleagues. 6.1, item Appendix 2. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Okay, I think that's all the declarations of interest. Yeah, moving on to, could I just get Councillor Baird and Councillor McCloughery to remove their hands, please, just before we move on. Okay, now to matters arising from the 3rd of March meeting 2021. I'll take it now page by page. So page 1, page 2, I think there's an item there. John?
Yes, Chair. In relation to the informal meeting with the Minister for Infrastructure, there's correspondence at 4.1 from the Minister in relation to clarification on the removal of existing screening plant, where the Minister highlights the role of the utility regulator in the process of the funding constraints, and also highlights in 2 issues with regard to screening plant and the removal of screening plant, where she asked for members to provide details of correspondence to the department officials, and she will look into it as to where they think it has been removed. And also you will see in the last paragraph again where she asked to provide details of correspondence from department officials in relation to the waste pumping stations and the end of pipes discharge into the environment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. First up, Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This correspondence, obviously, the minister's denying effectively that screening was ever put in place in some of these locations, but the reality is, from what I think we even have it from the Northern Ireland Environment Agency, that there is actually an admission that the screening was removed in black and white. I've sent a copy to Alison, and I think all the other councillors indeed, that previously, that the screening was removed in order to, because of the inability to, because of austerity cuts. And my understanding is that in the past, a few decades ago, these combined sewer outlets were actually inspected on a daily basis. Now they are not hardly inspected at all. And I have multiple detailed reports of the combined sewer outlets, which have been over a period of decades releasing large quantities of untreated sewage directly into Lough Erne, the River Erne. And indeed, some of this buildup was actually removed at a point it becomes so bad, and would all be known. So I'm very confused really as to how the minister could write a letter that is almost ignorant of these basic facts. But I'm happy, if possible, to bring forward a proposal that we do respond, and that any councillors, I'm sure there are other councillors with detail on some of these matters. I will certainly provide the details that I have in terms of the outlets, the locations. What I would also request is that we request statistics on flows into and out of these outlets over time, because my understanding is that these flow statistics will actually prove the quantity of sewage that has entered the water over time. And I think we need that going back quite a distance, but in some format we need to obtain statistics around how much sewage water has flown directly into Lough Erne, and I think that is to be obtained through analysing the flows into and out of these combined sewer outlets. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Coffey, for that proposal. Councillor McAleer, would you like to second that proposal?
Sorry, excuse me, Chair. Yeah, quite happy to second that. And just on a related note, I'm sure other councillors are aware of correspondence from residents in Ravensbury and Garrison relation to sewerage issues, and I would like to think that we as a council could do something to address those. And obviously, each councillor probably has been in receipt of one or several copies of correspondence for that, where seemingly sewerage issues and planning conditions weren't met or weren't treated from back as far as 2006, and well, it's now 2021. And the reports from residents there are that their sewage system still isn't working properly. So I further to the correspondence being raised and this coming up on the agenda tonight, I would be proposing that we as a council investigate how we can help the residents of our district, be that contacting NI Water to see how we can proceed with this, because obviously this is a historical issue that has been ongoing for a number of years now, and the residents really are at a loss. They're telling us that they're being passed from pillar to post, and nobody is taking on the severity really of the situation. They've talked about the sewage overflow going into Loch Melvin, which obviously is another environmental hazard. And you know, we spoke last night about the issues in the Auchlish River. You know, this is something that we have to be very mindful of, protecting our waterways and protecting our residents' basic human rights as well. So I'd like to raise that as a further proposal, please, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Could you get a seconder for that separate proposal before we move on?
Yeah, I'm coming in here. My hand
Okay, yeah, go on ahead, Councillor Phelan.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Just want to come in at the back of Emirates there, mentioning Ravensbury, myself and some of the other West councils is working very heavily on that there, and with the fishing club down there as well, and just to agree with them there. But it's the old issue of the unadopted sites, the main problem. That's the old problem with the whole thing here, and it is a big threat to Loch Melvin there, the fishing there. So I'll just second Emma's proposal there.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Phelan. So then to Councillor Curry.
Yes, Gurmagad Cairley, and apologies if this was covered. I had to take a phone call there, but I don't believe it was. But maybe if Choreo Coffee could include it. My concern is that it's just being presented to us all the time as this huge amount of money, and we get that, you know, a huge amount of money is needed to do these works in their totality. But why aren't they broken down into smaller, you know, break that business case down into smaller parts? Could we also ask that, because yes, it seems insurmountable when 2 billion is being quoted, but you know, if we could have that broken down into parts, and where is the prioritization of that?
Okay, thank you. You'd be happy enough to include that, Councillor O'Coffey?
Certainly, Chair.
Okay, and them two proposer and seconder, we're all in agreement? Okay, thank you, members. Okay, moving on back to matters raised on page 3. Page 4. I think there's an item here, John.
Yes, Chair, on page 4 and page 5, there items correspondence is 4.21 and 4.22 on the agenda. Various pieces of correspondence from CCMS and indeed from St Mary's High School, Brala, in relation to the high school in relation to their Peace 4 project, and CCMS writing to the Parents' Council in relation to what the Parents' Council see as inaccuracies in the communication with the Council in March. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that, John. Okay, first up, Councillor Gannon.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's quite obvious that there's been a amended letter here. It shows there was mistakes in the first one, CCMS, and they have been found wanting on this particular issue, Chair. It says 2020 was when it was first aware. The school has been aware since 2017. The Parents Action Group and the Parents Council have letters of support and all that to do with it. But I think this does provide some. This does cause some questions. This piece of correspondence, Chair. Basically, they've talked about providing clarity on funding. They've basically admitted that they've shown a special interest in Brala in this case, as they don't get involved. They've said that. In fact, they encourage their 450 schools to apply independently. And it does bring up questions about the intention here. And I would urge CCMS, when it comes to obviously there's a freedom of information request, which everyone knows about at this stage, so I won't go into the details of it. But there was blacked out sections of it. Revealing these would ease concerns or answer questions the community have if what CCMS are saying is true. So it might be worthwhile for them, if there's anyone listening, to consider doing that. And if what they're saying is true, that they've had no undue influence or not tried to influence, they would have nothing to fear from it. In fact, it would help them, Chair. But I'll leave my comments at that, and I'll propose to note at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, that Councillor Gannon. Councillor Feely, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and I'll be brief. Yeah, just very, very disappointed with this response, and I think it was Bernice or myself. I don't know. We asked, I think it was Bernice. And I second, we asked for them to come down to meet us, and they never even mentioned that. And I think and Adam has got over the whole stuff about the Peace 4, so I'm not going to go into that detail at all. But it's just that the CCMS has always done this. They've always blocked any progress in Brala this last 20 years, for the school to progress, even as far back as when John O'Dowd was Minister for Education. He gave the school a reprieve that time to get cross-border going. And the CCMS never even looked at it. It's just a tick boxing exercise that they might have had one meeting, and that was about it. And with a school in Ballyshannon, that was it. They never even looked to progress that issue. So it just goes to show what the CCMS is like and never even tried for to keep the school going. And even a colleague, Gemma Dolan, brought up in the executive there about 2 weeks ago with Minister Weir, even still a bit of cross-border option, even if kids isn't going to go to Inniskillen schools, go to school in Ballyshannon to get some kind of transport sorted out for them, because it is looking now that Brala is definitely closing, because we have to face up to reality now, and we have to make plans for the children in it and stuff, and it is going to close. But it's very disappointing, and in my view, the CCMS has a big idea on their head. 2 super schools in Inniskillen, 1,000 plus in each school. Join St Joe's and St Mick's and the convent and St Francis. Just join them up and get everybody to bus the kids up there, which nowadays isn't the thing to be done, but that's just what they're planning, and their plans are working out now after getting Brala closed, and it's just very disappointed. But I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, very disappointing is right, Councillor Feely. Thank you for your comments. Councillor Swift.
Yeah, Guramagat, and well, contrastingly, I'm not accepting the closure of the rural school, and the very fact that our Super Council has had to set up a Rural Affairs Committee, being the very raison d'etre that we are being ignored and neglected and not invested in because of these failed decisions at Stormont level. So no way am I sitting back and allowing this additional pathetic decision to be going ahead. And I think in the instance of CCMS, they have completely failed us also, comparably to the CCMS response to the threat of the closure at St Aidan's over in Derlin, where the community and CCMS and church and all community weighed in heavily behind and ensured that rural education was sustained in that area. And I have said it time and time again, a special case needs to be made for Brala, a unique case. And indeed, I think probably with the reshuffle that's going to take place at Stormont, we need to make a further appeal to a possible new incoming education minister. The very fact that there's been a lack of transparency and redacted information creates a lot of smoke and mirrors for me, of which I do not accept and will not accept. And I don't think that we should be sitting back. If we allow this to happen, well, are we just going to allow the tarpaulin to be pulled over for Fermanagh or west of the Ban altogether? You know, box us in, you know, give us nothing, hope we go away, shut up, you know, quit yapping. It's not going to happen. As long as I have a voice box, I am going to speak up for our rural constituents. And the whole entire community and the entire area are sick of it. Sick of the lack of investment, sick of the threats for years and years, and now this proposal to close. Forget about it. We're not accepting it. No way, never. And I think CCMS, as already been said, even failed to say they would meet us. So I suggest and I propose that they address the very fact that the elected representatives of the rural constituents who want to sustain rural education at St Mary's Brala demand to meet as a matter of urgency to address the serious gaps in all of this correspondence. And I think the tone of my voice, everybody knows that I am quite infuriated with it, but I remain committed and convicted to speak up on behalf of the people and all of the people who want to see the education sustainability and the economic viability of that area. Gurmagat Kirlach.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Swift. Councillor Green, you're up next.
Thanks, Chair. No, I would agree with a lot of the sentiments that has been said before, and I would maintain that small schools actually are proven to have the best outcomes for pupils that go to them. They are not at a disadvantage. Let's call a spade a spade. This is all about money. CCMS is no friend of small or rural. They seem to, the bigger the better. And as for the super schools that they're proposing in Skilling, that may well be the case, and that they might end up getting their way. But I would like to have a call out for St Kevin's and Listonskee that is proven that it is a super school with the results and everything that it's getting, and St Aidan's and Darlin, and indeed St Mary's Brala. They're all super schools, and a number of primary schools are under threat as well at the minute. And as a council, we really do need to have our voice heard. We need to be on the steps of Stormont on this. We need to be on the steps. There's no hiding place for rural people now, nor rural people not sit back and not fight for their rural services anymore, in my opinion. Just one question, and maybe if we're corresponding with these people again, and maybe it has already been answered, was this decision or these decisions have they ever been rural proofed? What are they saying about rural proof? Are they saying it has no effect on rural areas? Surely this has a major effect on our rural area, and so I would like to see what the rural proofing is. So just few points.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Green. Do you want to come in there, John?
Chair, I think the decision with regard to whether it has been rural proofed or whatever, I think is a question maybe that is worth asking when members meet CCMS when we arrange a meeting.
That's perfect. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Just before I move on to other speakers, and there's quite a few, and I'm not preventing anybody from speaking. I know we've been through all this a few times, but if members could keep their comments brief because it's quite a big agenda I want to get through. So call in user 2. Could you identify yourself, please? Is that you, Councillor Clark? Call in user 2. I think you're on mute there.
Hello?
Yeah, is that you, Sean?
Yeah, that's Councillor Clark here.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Councillor Clark. Okay, now
Right.
moving on. Councillor O'Coffey, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have to echo the points being made by Councillor Swift, really, and that is to say that there should be no acceptance of this as an acceptable, this is not acceptable to our community. The school, St. Mary's, has a long established, successful history of delivering education in conjunction and close to the local community in that area. Children come from large distances to go to that school because they know the quality of the education that's offered, and there's a lot of positives to it. And I echo what Councillor Green said on that score. The reality is, however, that this is caused by the policies being adopted by Stormont, which are rooted in austerity cuts. We've had two establishment politicians kick off on this, one of whom said to move on and to take this as read, and the other one said it's time to move on because it's closing and there's nothing we can do about it. Well, I don't accept that, and I don't think the local community accepts that. And I certainly want to pay tribute to the efforts of the local parents campaign group who have continued to fight for this school for more than a decade. And they've done so with great commitment and enthusiasm, and rightfully so. And I think that we do need to take this to the powers that be, because this is not something we can accept. And in this week, when some perhaps are telling us to accept these things, we are already being threatened with the loss of acute services in this county. We're not going to accept that either, and we've got to start standing up as a council to say no to these cutbacks and to those driving these cutbacks. And that requires commitment, I think, that we need to see expressed by all the councillors in this council. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to extend support and solidarity from County Tyrone to the difficulties that are being faced here. I do have to say I'm quite shocked, saddened and surprised to hear some of the establishment parties really bowing down and taking it for granted that this decision has been made. I looked to a decision not so long ago that Councillor Keenan and others were involved on and got a U-turn on the Newton Butler playgroup, and I think that all hope can't be lost. If we just agree to this and go quietly into the night, we're not going to have a leg to stand on.
Yeah.
To borrow the phrase of another group, that it's time Stormont took the knee off our neck. They're constantly squeezing here, they're constantly taking away. And again, as Councillor O'Coffey rightly says, a day or two ago there was talk of removing acute services. They're removing schools.
Yeah, we'll just stick to the point of the school. I know what you're talking about, but we'll just stick to the
Well,
CCMA.
I think it's vitally important that not just the local representatives to that area, but across the council stand united on this issue, because an injury to one is going to be an injury to all, and if they see that they can take one away without so much of a fight, they're going to come again, and they're going to come again. So I'd just like to put that on record, Chair.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no problem. Thank you for that, Councillor McCaffrey.
Gormagad, Caherly, this is this is a heartbreaking issue, because I think the lack of regard that's been given to St Mary's Brollow School by the Department of Education and in particular CCMS is astonishing. I mainly declare an interest as someone who works in a school that was under threat of closure a mere 9 years ago. And the turnaround that has been in St Aidan's High School is the proof that when rural schools are allowed to thrive and are not faced with the death knell of closure, which seems to always affect County Fermanagh in particular, that these schools can prosper, numbers go up, the pupils in rural schools continuously outperform other pupils and work extremely hard, the staff work extremely hard, and I think that it is just ridiculous that we get these correspondents, they don't come down to meet, they've offer no interest into the school community or to the parents or pupils and the the life of the school. I know that my council colleague, Councillor Feely, Anthony Feely, has been doing tremendous work on this, that has been involved in the campaign, in several ways as an elected representative, as a parent of pupils at the school, and as a local supporter of the school,
It's after accepting closure.
well, I think that has the cross-border option been completely fully explored? Could we not write to neighbouring county councils and turn this into more of a cross-border campaign? I think more has to be done to accept closure. I think is to accept defeat, and we should fight to the end on this issue.
Yeah.
Gormal.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Councillor McClary, you're up next.
Yeah, sorry, it's basically it's obviously it's very emotive, the closure of the school in any area, and I mean the Cash area went through this quite a few years ago, and there's still people quite sore about it. It's just to remind Seamus, I'm sure he omitted it, but there is an excellent secondary school in Irvinstown, St Mary's Irvinstown, and I'm sure he would have mentioned them if he'd remembered it, but it probably slipped his mind.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Coyle, you're up next.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to second Councillor Swift's proposal. I don't think it has been seconded, but
yeah, thank you.
As an ex-pupil of St Mary's Brala, I am absolutely disgusted. I went to school there because it was and still is an excellent school. I stand with the parents and students and the whole community in fighting against this. And some members here trying to misrepresent members on my colleague Councillor Gannon, trying to make snide remarks about it. It's not acceptable. Trying to, feather their own nest. But sustainable schools policy has been detrimental to Brala. John O'Dowd brought it in. It needs to be reviewed. But we as a community are not being listened to. And that is why I still want to meet Minister Weir. He may be changed in the next few weeks or whatever, but whoever it is, we need to meet them. I will be fighting. I will be standing beside my neighbours, my constituents, and I will not be accepting this. It has been part of our community for over 40 years, and we're not 50 years. Like, we're not going to lie down and take this. And it doesn't matter. I'm part of a political party, but this is passion for me, and I'm not accepting it now.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for your comments, Councillor Coyle. Councillor Curry.
Gormagad Caherly. Yeah, it is a very emotive issue, and we have been over the points. I also just wanted to reference the snide remarks there. I don't think that anybody can honestly in this chamber say that Councillor Feely has not done everything and fought for this school. I think that's really disgraceful, and others as well. I was disappointed too that they didn't even reference the meeting that we sought with them, but I'd just like to remind members who are given their solidarity from across the council area tonight. I don't know what that's about. It's totally, I just think it's a bit disgraceful. But we did have a meeting with CCMS. I remember chairing it, and the Parents Action Group were outside the town hall in force, fighting for their school and fighting for the community, because a loss of a school, it's more than a loss of a school, and a school's more than that. You could count on one hand, sadly, the amount of councillors who were that bothered to turn up, to stand up for that community at the time. So I just ask members to really temper their comments, what they're saying. We are all disappointed. Gemma Dolan, as Collier Feely mentioned, and Collier McCaffrey, has been continuing to raise it. It was disappointing that the integrated education model wasn't even looked at. but around the cross-border education now, I know that Gemma has been working on that. I think us as a council could maybe, is there anything we could do? Could I propose that we could write to the Donegal education bodies just to see how we can facilitate. This is about the children and not having them travel, making 50-mile round trips every day, to be educated locally and protecting our rural areas. So if there is something we could do in that regard, Chair, just to see. I understand, you know, everybody's frustrated, but I'm really annoyed at those comments directed at Corlear and others.
That's fine. Yeah, no, you've made your point, Councillor Croy, and quite rightly so. So
Well,
the final
just
speaker.
if I could just point out, Corlear Chair, just that there has been they've had legal opinions. You know, there are things the school is up against here, and we just need to find a way around it.
Yeah, okay, no problem, thank you. And the final speaker on this, because we've had this trashed out again, Councillor Eamon Keenan is the final speaker on this, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, very disappointing, and you can see there is passion in the chamber with regards the closure of the school, but it reminds me a lot of, unfortunately, St Eugenius in Versley, and you know, faint echoes from council chambers or the media. It's just not going to cut it. The fact of the matter is, we've got establishment parties in Stormont legislating and running this state. You know, these people need to get onto their leaders, onto the parties in control, and take real action. But full solidarity with the people down there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. And Councillor McAduff, you haven't been in yet, so final word to yourself.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to presume that the labelling establishment doesn't apply to Sinn Féin. I'm just going to make that presumption. But the point I will make is this, and I'm going to make a proposal that this council re-engage with the shared island unit within the department of the Taoiseach's office. Recently, we met strong team from the Taoiseach's office, and it was about a shared island. Now, in matters to do with acute health, this applies as well, but I'm going to concentrate on education. Education is an area of cooperation under the Good Friday Agreement. And let's test that out with Brollah, with St Mary's. Let's seek to have an engagement with education officials from Dublin, from the government in the south, perhaps under the aegis of the Shared Island Unit, and explore a north-south solution for a particular community along the border, which is Brollah. So it's really, really important. And I think the mechanism for us, we've already knocked on the door once. We've got to know those people. Angel O'Donoghue headed up the deputation. And I think what we should do is write to the Shared Island Unit for meaningful engagement. That wasn't just a hello and bye-bye. Whatever practical problems affect our council area of a north-south character, of a cross-border nature, need to be ironed out. And the vehicle for doing that, in my opinion, is the Shared Island Unit. So I'm making that proposal, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, can I get a seconder for that?
I'll second it, Andy. Can I come in for 1 second, Gavin,
No,
please?
sorry, Councillor Feely. You've been in before, and I really want to move on to get this business done. I understand why you want to come in, but I have to move on. So you're seconding that proposal.
And I'll second Siobhan's too, Gavin.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. That's all proposals, and we're moving on back to matter.
Chair, Alec Baird here. Having listened to that conversation, I have to declare I didn't take part. I looked at the correspondence and said nothing, but the way the debate's gone, I've declared an interest. Thank you.
No problem at all. Thank you. And could all members that have their hands up please remove them, please? Now moving on back to matters raising page.
Chair, I just asked, I thought that it was a policy that if you declared an interest, you had to say why you declared an interest. But I have no idea why Alex is declaring an interest.
That would be down to the member, I suppose. Is that correct?
No, in our training, that's what we were told, that we were supposed to give a reason why we declared an interest.
Okay, Councillor Baird, would you like to
Yeah,
state
more than happy to clarify. I'm chair of the Board of Governors of Devonish College.
No problem at all. Thank
Sorry,
you.
Chair. Sorry, Chair, it's Councillor Blake here. Just when we're going back to that previous point there, I'd also like to declare an interest in that as an employee of a small rural school that was referenced earlier on during the debate. So
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Blake. Okay, this is still Councillor Feely and Councillor McAduff. Could you remove your hands, please? Now, matter rising page 5, page 6. I think there's an item there, John.
Page 6, Chair.
No.
Page 6, Chair.
Yeah, go on ahead, Councillor Dehan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, it's just item 5.2, page 6, under dog control initiatives, and it's just in reference to the first action point of that resolution in terms of addressing dog filing issues. It's a very small point, Chair. There have been numerous complaints from constituents regarding overflowing dog filing bins. I suppose in one way it's good to see it, Chair. At least people are using the bins. But could I just suggest that maybe we would need to increase the frequency with which we empty those bins, particularly coming into the summer months in case of unpleasant odours and so on. So I just really wanted to make that suggestion.
Okay.
Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dehan. I'll just bring Celine in now.
Chair, members, I had intended to bring this up maybe under matters arising under the next meeting when we had next minute where we had the discussion under littering, and I'm aware of the issues that have been raised by the dog filing bins, and we've discussed this at a service level and tried to look at what the practical options are. The dog filing bins are they have a 40-litre capacity. The standard litter bins have 110 to 120 litre capacity. Both of those bins are emptied to the same, well, they're disposed of in the same way. So it is now our proposal that we will start to phase out the dog filing bins, which are mainly an OMA based initiative, and we are putting stickers on the standard bins to let people know that they can use the standard bins for disposal of dog filing materials, and that leaves it better operationally for regular emptying. It's just that, yes, agreed, it is good that they are being used. It's just that we aren't able to service them with the regularity that they need. So we are encouraging people to use the larger waste bins, and we will be ultimately removing the dog filing bins, but not until we're satisfied that there's enough standard bins there to deal with the issues. So that's an operational change that we're looking to progress, really, to try and address that particular issue.
Yeah, thank you for that, Celine. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's I'm sure we're considering the correspondence that's arisen under 5.2 as well here, are we? That's the DERA correspondence and so on. Yeah, well, it's just the letter back from the DERA minister is genuinely well, he doesn't seem to engage with the issue at hand at all, insofar as there's a recognition of the animal welfare regulations from 2018, but no reference at all to Lucy's Law, which was passed by the Westminster government there, which makes third-party purchasing of puppies an illegal act. And it is this aspect that we're trying to progress. So I would like to propose that we respond to the minister and draw his attention to the correspondence, the legislation is known as Lucy's Law, which is in effect in England and Wales, but has not been transposed into law in Northern Ireland. And I think that was the point we wanted to make initially. So thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Could I get a seconder for that proposal before we move on, please?
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. You're up next now to speak. Thank you.
Yes, it was Councillor Ehan has already raised the bin issue about dogs. I suppose at the start of COVID last year, large footfall on the pavements, and it is good to see people using them. But yeah, so I've got my update on that, and just possibly maybe if there is larger bins put on the routes going round, instead, you know what I mean, instead of having them at the entrance, but at least put one going round. And the other thing is to do with dogs roaming about. There's been quite a few complaints this last few months. I want to raise it here now. It was just something that I've picked up that somebody has raised into the council a few times about dogs, and it seems to be more in housing estates. And I suppose what's been highlighted to me in housing estates would be Mullaghmore, Hunters Crescent, Courtrush Park, and those as loose dogs. Sometimes it can be 5 to 7 dogs roaming about, and so just if the dog warden would be mindful.
We just lost you there, Mr. Fitzgerald. Yeah, I think we got that point, so thank you for that, Councillor Fitzgerald. Councillor Michael Duff, you're up next.
Yeah, just to support Councillor Fitzgerald in that point, and maybe in support of Councillor Fitzgerald, because she works very hard, particularly in the Mullaghmore community, you know, and if our dog wardens could touch base with those community leaders who have raised issues to do with Mullaghmore in the recent past, that would be helpful. But also, Chair, something happened recently, very interesting. Leitrim County Council have undertaken a new initiative aimed at addressing dog fouling, and it involves DNA testing of dog fowl and matching this against records that they will have kept in the County Council. So at a future meeting of Environmental Services, I wonder would it be possible for a report, you know, to include reference to the cost and other details associated with the Leitrim County Council initiative, to see if that's something that we could match in our fight against dogfowl. And just to restate that one of the hotspots in Omagh, there are many of them unfortunately, but one of them where residents keep contacting me to make the point is Old Dromore Road. And I do want to thank the dog wardens, by the way, for their attentiveness. I mean, when you do sit down and talk to a dog warden employed by this council, they do work very hard. It's hard to get the proof and all of that, but I know they go about their work quite forensically, so to speak. Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely. Thank you for them comments, Councillor McAduff. Councillor McLaughlin, you're up next.
Thank you. I'm going to second. I was actually going to bring that topic up that Barry has mentioned about the DNA, to see just what sort of costs were surrounding that and if it was feasible for this council. The other thing is the Castle Irvine Kneecairn Demesne. I regularly walk there, and this last month there's been a trend of people bagging up their dog waste and then just dropping it on the ground as if some sort of magic fairy comes along and lifts it. And I'm not sure how we would work. I mean, as it's obviously now Gardram have taken that over. I mean, the improvements they've made is immense, and it's a lovely place to go around. But people just throwing dog poo in bags all around the place seems quite. There are bins in the car park, but people seem unable or do not want. So I don't know if we can liaise with the owners to help them, or the leasees, to see if we can help them with that problem.
Okay, thank you for them comments. Councillor Smith, you're up next.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I suppose I just want to make maybe a quick comment to Celine. I know what she was saying about sort of, you know, consolidating the lines, but I do think that some previous comments by councillors have kind of emphasised the importance of convenience. And look, I mean, nobody particularly likes walking around with a dog poo in their pocket, like, you know. I would be concerned that I think from what I'm, and certainly she can correct me if I'm wrong, it would be a sort of a consolidation exercise, and then you are losing a bit of convenience. And I would just be concerned that while it might be operationally handier, those dog bins, they have worked in Omagh, you know, and I was wondering, I mean, that will come back to council. That's not an operational decision, I assume, and I would maybe like to thrash that one out at a later date, maybe before it's sort of done, and maybe just to make sure that one, it's not an operational decision that hasn't been done yet, and then it will kind of come back to council in due time. Would that be okay, Chair?
Yeah. Okay, do you want to come in there, Celine?
Through the chair, I would regard it to be an operational decision. This is about how, you know, how we allocate our resources to empty the bins and what happens to them. The reality is that whether it's disposal out of a dog fouling bin or whether it's disposal out of a standard bin, it goes to the same place. So therefore, it makes sense that we do try to consolidate there, and you know that allows us to focus our efforts. I appreciate the points about convenience. I don't necessarily agree that the dog fouling bins have been the success that we're saying, or certainly that might be at odds with some of the other complaints that we're having. But really, we need people to be responsible. If that means carrying it a little bit further down the road, well, you know, I think that's what what may need to happen. But we're not actually removing them. It would be a phased basis whenever we're satisfied that they are. You know, that there is ample disposal facilities in the vicinity or reasonably in the vicinity, or otherwise it's another regime that we need to put in place, and that will require additional operatives. It is definitely one of the least pleasant jobs that we have available in the council, and well, again, we haven't had complaints as such, maybe more so comments again from staff in relation to that. So we do think that operationally that's the way to go.
Yeah, thank you for that, Celine. Councillor Green, you're up next.
Thank you, Chair. No, there's just a couple of points that was raised there. Councillor Coffey mentioned about asking about Lucy's Law. I tend to have a different opinion on Lucy's Law. I think Lucy's Law actually been introduced has added to the problem. It may have fixed part of the problem, but it has added where now pups are going for £1,500 and £2,000 a pup because of the scarcity of pups over in England and that. So I think it's actually driving this whole industry on the ground. So we should be very careful of what we wish for, but that's just my comment on that. And just could I ask somebody there in around when we're on about dogs, I know the council deals with dogs if they're stray or whatever. But I had a recent occasion where I had cats. A man was being infested with, and no agency had responsibility for it, and nobody, only a charity to deal with it. Now, I thought that the council had was some kind of a provision within the council, I just can't remember what the name of it was, where that if no other agency had responsibility for it, actually the council then could take the responsibility for it. I'm not sure what that law is, but could somebody just clarify that for me?
Yeah, thank you for that. Does anybody want to comment on that at all? John?
Yeah, Chair, if I can just say, I'll come back to Councillor Green on that in relation to cats. Sometimes definition about what we are responsible for and what other agencies are responsible for can get a little grey and a little blurred. But certainly we'll come back to Councillor Green in relation to cats.
That's great. Thank you for that, John. And finally, Councillor O'Reilly, please.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to, on the back of the discussion, Chair, make a couple of comments. I suppose for 20 years, and I'm sure long before I joined the council, they were talking about this subject. And the discussion doesn't seem to have moved an awful lot since I first joined. We're still fighting the battle of picking up after people, both rubbish and dog fowl. And I think that to do the same thing, Chair, continuously and expect a different result. Somebody once said something about that. And I think that we really should be looking at something different. Now, one of the ways that police work with doing things is the preventative approach by just their visible presence around the place. And I'm just wondering about the visible presence of the dog wardens. And I'm looking for just some information as to, one, what way do we sort of try to promote this online to where more and more people are nowadays, and get this message of the dog warden was in Balleek, was in Carrickmore, was in wherever. And two, do we have high visibility vans with dog warden on them showing that the dog warden is? I just think that there's a perception out there from people that the chances of being caught doing this is so small they don't care. And and that's only some people that consistently allow their dogs to poop on the pavements and all over the place. And I think it's important that there's a visible presence there from this council to show that we're taking this. I know they do in the background work and all of the rest of it, but you know, I think that preventative visible presence, I think we could maybe up a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just bring John in this, please.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. I suppose in relation to the visibility of the dog wardens themselves, members will remember, I think it was March, I brought up a report through of the campaign that we were starting in to really attack all of this about responsible dog ownership, and the big promotional campaign which we had, and the education awareness, and indeed increasing the number of staff that we had in relation to for dog wardens. That, I have to say, is continuing, and actually we are actually having a bit of success, because if you think back to earlier on in the year where we were issuing no fixed penalties, you will notice now that every single month there are fixed penalties issued in relation to dog fouling. And we are continuing to try and increase the number of people who are actually patrolling as dog wardens. We have had discussions this week about employing, on top of the people who are permanent dog wardens, we have people redeployed as dog wardens. And now this week we're actually talking about bringing in casual staff actually to go to those hotspot areas and try and give out the message and enforce the laws. I suppose in relation to the high visibility vans, no, we don't have high visibility vans with dog wardens on them. They have vans with Mananoma District Council on them, but we are continuing, and I have to say this last month there has been successes in relation to it. Yes, it's a major problem, and there are major problems in hotspots, but we are having success, I have to say. And you know, we have introduced the stencils on some of our paths. We've had the big promotional campaign. We are going out to the press. We are online. We are telling people our successes in relation to fixed penalties and so on online. So we are getting there, and I suppose it is. You never see the end of the line. But I think we're approaching it in the right manner, and I don't think we are doing things in the same way that we have always done it. I think we are being a little bit more proactive now.
Chair, I take John's comments on board. I would sort of still, I'm of two minds whether to propose or not, or to give a little bit longer, and I suppose I'm inclined to leave it to give a little bit longer on the path that we have set ourselves at the moment. But please bear in mind while we do not always agree with them, the red coats walking around in their visibility certainly make people park in the right sort of manner when they're seen. So I'm just using the analogy for the dog wardens. I think we should think about the visibility. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, we've two additional speakers. If you could be very brief, please. Councillor Keenan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to second Donald's proposal, and I suppose on Lucy's Law, as far as I'm aware, I think the essence of it is that you can't buy a puppy of a third party, and you have to see the puppy with the mother. So I'm not sure where Seamus is going, that this would drive like an underground, black market of puppy farms. I think anything that's positive towards to stop exploitation of any animal. and profiteering of it, I think should be supported.
Okay, yeah, well, just for your information, Councillor Fitzgerald actually seconded, but your support's noted. Councillor Armstrong, finally, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, another big issue. Chair, just something Councillor McLaughlin said about people leaving the dog fouling bags, you know, on the ground. Some time ago, somebody reminded me the council had issued, you know, the material, the dog fouling bags as a gift, and on those little cases that they were held in, there were clips. I think there were clips that you could put the bag onto, so the person walking around would be able to carry it, you know, and then take it back to a receptacle back at a car park or take it home, wherever. So I wonder, could that be looked at? There's another issue I wanted to just ask John for Director Boyle about clarification. I think it was mentioned in March that the dog wardens will be going out at night as well in those areas. And, you know, while it is antisocial hours, that's when a lot of the dog filing, you know, is happening. Those on, you know, later at night. And the last thing is really, you know, I welcome the letter back from the Minister for Justice, but I just I wonder if I could possibly ask, has there been a response from the Minister for Justice to address the dog attack, the invitation to speak to the family, and that's something to come to RNC next week. Just maybe in advance of that, if that could be, if any response has been received as yet, as a bit of a you know, a reminder on that we'd be looking for that, please.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I don't think we have as yet.
No, Chair, no, I don't think we've received any response back, but certainly for RNC on Tuesday night, we'll make representation to see where that is at. In relation to the collars and the leads, it was addressed at the March meeting where the Green Dog Walking Scheme, where we said we were introducing the Green Dog Walker Scheme, where everyone who signs up will get a lead and a collar and bags in order to help them lift all of the waste from their dogs. And part of our PR campaign has been for people to sign up to that scheme where they would get all of those free issues. And in relation to the patrols at night, yes, those are taking place now in the evenings with the increased number of staff that are working. And I suppose just in relation, going back to Councillor O'Reilly's query, if he could just give us a little leeway for a number of months just to see how successful the current campaign and the Revitalise campaign has been in relation to the success in relation to dog ownership. I'd appreciate it. Maybe we'll bring a report in the next number of months.
Thanks, John. Thank you.
Thank you for that, John. Okay, now back to Matters Rising, page 7, page 8, page 9.
Mr. Chair, I think there's an item at the bottom of page 9. We've dealt with the correspondence 4.3, 1 and 2, but in relation to the next item at 4.33 from the Minister for Infrastructure regarding the safety of footpaths. There is correspondence from the Minister in relation to the inspection frequency for the footpaths, which she states are dependent on the location of the pedestrian traffic volumes and vary from month to month, but also highlights the limited service due to the budget deficiencies that are available.
Thank
you, Chair.
Thank you for that, John. Okay, now moving on. Page 10, page 11, page 12. Is there an item on page 12, John?
No, I don't think so, Chair. No.
No, moving on. Page 13.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
Yeah. Item 4.4, Chair, in relation to entertainment licence fees, and I think this was addressed at the meeting where we had it was asked about the entertainment licence and taking advantage of the reduced nominal fee of £1, and we have had correspondence to say that this will carry over for the full year. So if you don't get advantage of it just before the start of the financial year in 21-22, that you will take advantage of that £1 in that financial year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, John. Councillor Keenan, are you looking in, or is that from previous?
Sorry, that's previous, yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Councillor Kelly, Catherine, please.
Yeah, Gavin, it was me that raised the licensing fee on behalf of a constituent, and just want to thank you for the clarification there. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Sorry, Councillor Fitzgerald, you looking in? No.
Oh,
Councillor
sorry, I
Dehan?
was removing my hand from the last time. Sorry.
No problem. Councillor Dehan?
Chair, do you require a proposal to note that last letter from Minister Mallon? If so,
Yeah. Okay, I'll take a proposal. Thank you for that, Councillor Dehan. Could I get a seconder? Councillor Garrity, thank you. Okay, now back to matters arising. Page 13. Page 14. Yeah, go on ahead, John.
Yes, Chair. On the bottom of page 14, it was the Council writes the Minister for Infrastructure requesting the protection of prices for the older cars in relation to the introduction of E10 petrol. At agenda item 4.5, the Minister has communicated that proposals will include recognition for the number of older vehicles, including classic cars, and that continue to meet the E5 fuel requirements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, John. Councillor Kelly, Catherine, or is that from previous?
Yep, sorry from previous. Sorry, Gavin.
No problem at all. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This correspondence, our letter was exceptionally clear. We were looking for a response about, and it is recognised by the Minister, that there is a risk that those owners of older vehicles, including classic cars and early 2000s cars, will need to continue using E5. But our point really was that there should not be any detriment associated, and this point was not even remotely engaged by the Minister in her response. The throwaway comment that duty charged on fuel reserve matter, that doesn't come into it. The question is, if there are vehicles, the real problem is if there's only a relatively small number of vehicles requiring E5 fuel, the price of that will go dramatically up. And that's the point we were raising, that there needs to be thought given at this early stage to prevent those who hold older cars from suffering the monetary consequences. And this is going to affect people who can't perhaps upgrade their cars and so on, and people in rural areas especially. So I would just like to propose we return to the Minister, draw her attention to our intent in our original email letter, and request that she actually does something to protect those who have these older cars. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that. Could I get a seconder for that proposal, please?
I think
it was Councillor McAleer came in, so I'll take Councillor McAleer. Thank you. Councillor Dehan, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just going back to page 13, item 6.2. Did we have clarification, Chair, that the near zero energy building code has been implemented? Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Chair. We have actually, the NZEB code is implemented in Northern Ireland here. So as was the need to write to it's not required anymore to write to the Finance Minister.
Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that, John. Okay, now, Councillor Dehan, if you could lower your hand, please. Thank you. Okay, now back to matters rising, page 14. Page 15. Page 15, John? No. Page 6. Was it? Okay, page 16.
Yes, Chair. There's one item on page 16 with regard to grit piles and gritting off the road, included at 6.1 of the agenda, from the David McKinley, of the roads manager in Western Division.
Yeah, thank you for that, John. Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, Chair. Yeah, not overly impressed by the response from Mr. McKinley, but I was actually looking in to speak on item 6.9 on page 16.
Okay. What would you like to?
Just in relation to that, the consultation period having expired on Friday, and I suppose I would be of the mind that the council should be formally contacting the department to request an extension to receive their submission, because I know this is subject to a call-in, and my understanding is it's to be addressed at the next meeting, which would be the June meeting, which obviously for a consultation that expired on the 30th of April is far from satisfactory from my perspective and the constituents I represent. But I would be of them. I'd like to propose that we actually contact the DFA.
Councillor McAleer, I think I'll just bring John in this matter briefly.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. Chair, I think Councillor McAleer, I think the Chief Executive and indeed myself have communicated with you in relation to this in the Crocknaboy Road, in that we are awaiting the legal advice coming back, and until such time as the legal advice comes back, that we can't have a discussion on it.
Okay, that's that dealt with. Yeah.
Can I just double check what's the reason?
No.
For that?
Councillor McAleer, you just heard what John has said. They're awaiting legal advice, so there'll be no more discussion on that item. Councillor Green, would you like to end on this point?
It's not a live, active legal case. I don't understand why we're not permitted.
Excuse me, Councillor McAleer. John has said what he has said, and there'll be no more discussion on that. Thank you, Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. No, it was around the letter from David McKinley around the grit pile. It's a very long letter, and but it says very little. In fact, it says very little, but it says on numerous occasions. He seems to repeat himself on numerous occasions. The line that kind of occurred to me is currently the winter gritting service is very finely balanced. Well, the winter gritting service was very finely balanced in Fermanagh because we didn't get grit piles out. I think it was near to the end of January. Long months and months after they were intended to be out. I think there's a really strange letter. I think it has been raised of why it changed how they put out the grit piles, because they had started putting them out at road junction miles away from other local road junctions, and expected then people to transport them themselves. Well, if they were able to transport grit piles themselves, they probably wouldn't need them. Would be my point. So in rural roads on up to this year, they were always put maybe 50 or 100 yards apart, or meters apart, and that changed. That hasn't been answered. Nobody knows why that happened in Fermanagh, and nobody knows why it took the end of January for them to start putting them out. It's very strange, and an extremely strange letter, I must say. Makes zero sense.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Councillor Green. Councillor Feely.
Yeah, similar to Seamus there, much the same line, but disappointing again, like all of this. But I remember Barry brought up about getting agriculture contractors to help if things got real bad. There was no mention of that, or the kind of grit. And I remember I brought this up in another, the kind of grit that we were using. It was only like old stones, and it used to freeze on the side of the road. If it'd be froze, you'd nearly want to pick to get it out. You know, and none of that was ever mentioned on it here now. So. And I'm not going to repeat everything Seamus said, but the same handles was around here. Like there was no grit. They didn't come to the time of the frost, and the lorries was even slipping and sliding, trying to get it out when they need it, instead of having it there in September, October. So hopefully it'll not be the same handles next year. But there's not that many answers in this that we asked.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that, Councillor Feely. Councillor Wilson.
Yes, Chair. I think Councillor Green should be very thankful to get that out in February, because in my area we didn't get out to February or March, and we had to nearly intimidate them to get it out, and they only left it in just in places here and there. It wasn't. They didn't seem to have a program to do it. They just wherever suited. But yes, it was a disgrace that it should be out September time, because from that on you can expect to be looking for it. So that I think we need to be talking to Mr. McKinley and pointing that out to him. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And finally, Councillor Michael Duff.
Yeah,
please.
just referring back to Councillor Feely's point there, the proposal was that this council would meet with DFA, the UFU, NIAPA, other players, DERA, to discuss improvements to the winter gritting schedule in rural communities, you know, and it was following on from the grit pile complaints. I think DFA around that time kind of were pulling back from engagement with this council even. And it's something that I think we should try to achieve, and we don't have to wait to the winter. We should have a meeting with the relevant agencies to explore, can some of this work be deployed locally in the same way that snow clearance is achieved. You know, snow clearance, farmers are involved in that operation with DFI roads. Of course, we want it carried out by DFI roads, of course we do, but we need to get talking to them. And I think that we should continue to follow up on that specific request for a single issue meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Yep, thank you for that, Councillor Michael Duff. Okay, that's all of matters arising for that. Will it just bear with me 1 second, ma'am? Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so moving on now to item 5, which is matters arising from the 14th of April 2021. Could all previous members just take their hands down before moving on, please? Okay, so we'll take it page by page. So page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. Councillor Swift.
Yes, Guramagat, here, look, just on page 4, on the item that was raised about the Northern Ireland Statistics Research, the recent NISRA document, and our council's disappointment that some of the Census 2021 forms had not included the town lands in the postal address. Now, when I had received my own census form, I had taken action immediately and addressed that, and I have had a response, so I can appraise members. So Census Headquarters responded by saying the town land names were not included in the addresses that Census used to reach members of the public with us, because the systems and services used for the 2021 census were developed in partnership with the Office for National Statistics, who run the census in England and Wales, and a standardised address system was required, which conforms at the UK level, and therefore NISRA were not able to include our town lands in the address on the letters sent to all the households. But I am assured the town lands will, however, be added to the final census database for Northern Ireland, based on the address data held by Land and Property Services. Now, while the first part of that is quite enraging, the last half, the latter end, is reassuring, but to garner and guarantee that our town lands will be included in the final census database, can I please propose that our council and members will support contacting LPS to ensure that the address data held by them is provided to ensure our town lands are protected, and likely Councillor Green, I see his hand up, will hopefully second that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Swift. Councillor Green, would you like to second that?
Yeah, that's what I was coming in for. I'll second that, surely. No problem.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Green, and we're all agreed with that. Thank you. Back to matters arising, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11. Councillor McAleer.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, page 10, and it's following on from the proposal raised by Councillor Coffey that I'd second in relation to contacting the WHSCT. It's recently been brought to my attention, and I suppose obviously with the huge amount of stock that the health boards would be taking on that there's a lot of recyclable material going into the different buildings under the control of the Western Trust, and packaged in cardboard boxes. And a query has been raised with me in relation to the recycling of such or the disposal of such, and whether that is actually recycled or whether it's just dumped as part of the regular waste or landfill waste. So I was wondering, or I'd like to make a proposal in relation to addressing that or finding out that information. So first of all, if I could propose that the council maybe contacts the Western Trust to establish what the story is in terms of recyclable waste and whether it is being recycled. And if it's not currently being recycled, if we can work with the trust to ensure that recycling is promoted within and across the trust in general. So whether that's providing additional support if we have it, or if needs be providing bins, whatever it may be. But that's obviously a step down the road. But if we could make contact with the trust in the first instance, I think that would be a good move. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McAleer. I'll just bring Celine in here at this point.
Chair, this particular item stemmed from a report in the Waste Management Report last month, which reported on the ongoing work that we are doing with the Western Health and Social Care Trust, and that has been taken forward and supporting them in developing their waste management plan along with resources from RAP, NI and other areas. So I would encourage that we would continue to work in support of the trust, rather than, I suppose, trying to police and challenge them at this stage, because I do believe that there is there is the intent there as well, as there is in most and many public bodies to to address these issues in the context of climate change and sustainability. So I think we are already continuing to work with them, and I hope that will be successful. And again, if there are means and ways that if there are specific issues, I think they should be raised with the trust themselves, rather than us trying to divert from the good work that's going on.
Chair, could I just very briefly respond to that? And I appreciate what the director's saying, and this was in no way meant to be a confrontational issue. It was to reach out and make contact, really what is the practice at the minute, and really to collaborate with them to see if there is an issue there, how we could support or how we could alleviate that. I appreciate it is possibly something that is an ongoing issue, but I think it's been raised with me, and I just wanted to raise it. I thought it was relevant to the item. But it's in no way to be controversial, and I don't think at this stage is helpful.
Yeah, well, considering what Celine just said there, would you like to withdraw the proposal and see, as it's an ongoing process?
I suppose pending confirmation that would be something that would be addressed as part of this ongoing process. I'd be happy enough to do that then, Chair.
No, that's perfect. Thank you. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just have to start off by stating I don't think anyone would suggest that we would be policing or challenging the WHSCT, or anyone would imply that. So I'm happy enough with it. I have to say that the original issue I'd raised has, as far as I understand, been dealt with. But I do just want to second what Councillor McAleer is talking about. There's a colossal volume of waste produced, especially by an employer that size, effectively, and it is vital that we obviously do everything that we can do to facilitate the recycling and the reuse of those facilities as much as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor O'Coffey, and finally, Councillor Deehan.
Yes, thank you. And really, just to make the point, which I think has been made by Celine, this is an issue that I have raised on several occasions previously, recognising the amount of waste that is generated by the trust, and seeking to ensure that opportunities for recycling are optimised. Certainly, Chair, in the new Omagh Hospital, which is not new any longer, but we, in every room, we have a number of different bins, including a dedicated bin for mixed recycling, including a sticker instructing what can go in this bin. So I'm satisfied that the trust is committed to recycling, but I do feel that is something that we need to keep on the agenda to ensure that there is full compliance with recycling. And certainly I would hope that when people go to the trouble of segregating their waste, that it is not subsequently all combined and going to landfill. So I just wanted to make that point, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Deehan. Okay, now back to the matters raised on page 11. Page 12. Could I get a proposer and seconder for them matters, please? Councillor Armstrong, and seconded by Councillor Thompson. Thank you very much for that. Now moving on to item 6, Environment and Place Director Report 6.1, to consider building control and licensing report for the period of 26th of March to 22nd of April 2021. Paper A, and that's over to John, please.
Thank you, Chair. Standard building control and licensing report, Chair. First section is in relation to the building regulations and the number of applications that we have received and approved and so on. Second part lists the unauthorised developments at 2.2. And 2.3 is relating to the street naming and numbering. There is a new one in this month, the development of Craigan in Omagh. And we've consulted the developer in relation to the name of the street as suggested, and that Heather Drive. There are another two developments, Heather Lane and Heather View, in the same area, and the developer is actually proposing to provide a walkway between all of the three developments. You will remember last month, Chair, that we had a discussion on the next two items, one at Cavnamara in Trillick, and we had suggested a name for the street, and there was much discussion on it. Following further consultation, it has been suggested for Churchview, and that has actually been accepted by the developer. The second one that was discussed last month was at the development of Tamla in Newton Savile. And there were a number of, again, suggestions which were brought forward. And the developer has, we've consulted with him and with other people in relation to it, and he is prepared to accept Rathmore, but would like it to be Rathmore View. He feels that Rathmore on its own would be a little singular, and would prefer Rathmore View. The fourth part of the report is in relation to licensing and details at Appendix 2, all the licenses which we have issued in the period. So going to the recommendations, Chair, it's recommended that the Council notes the information in the Building Control Report and Licensing Report, approves the institution of legal proceedings for the unauthorised development works if an appropriate application is not received within a month, approves the name Heather Drive for the proposed road serving the new development at 2.3.1, approves the name Churchview for the proposed road serving the new development at outlined in 2.3.2 of the report, and approves the name Rathmore View for the road serving the new development detailed in paragraph 2.3.3 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that, John. I'll take all them as a collective when we're proposing second. Councillor McCann, you're up first.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thanks to John for his further work in relation to 2.3.2. I welcome the meaningful engagement with the locals, which produced the more appropriate name of Churchview in relation to this development, which relates to the local Church of Ireland, which is in the immediate vicinity of that development. And I think we as the council going forward should ensure that when we're considering the naming of developments, that we need to be satisfied that every avenue has been exhausted to link the development to the area, whether it be a local landmark or town land or other historical significance. And to that end, this deferral from last month was certainly justified when we saw what was being proposed last month to what we have before us tonight. So just them few words, Chair, and just to thank John again for taking us away to look at it and bringing it back again so promptly. So thanks, John, for your help.
Yeah, would you like to propose there, Councillor McCann?
There's a number of other speakers, Chairs. We'll let them come in and see what they have to say.
Okay, no problem. Okay,
Cheers.
thank you. Councillor McCaffrey up next.
Kylie, I was just coming in particular to the first recommendation and the list of the building control has given there for entertainment licenses and so forth. I was wondering, in recent circumstances where the legislation from Stormont had perhaps made it so unclear to some of the public premises and the likes of restaurants and those bars that were wishing to do outdoor catering or to provide that, is there a way that applications could be fast-tracked, or if council can operate in any more meaningful way to fast-track applications for premises that are, having had bad news last Thursday before the bank holiday weekend, that if they're now retrospectively or else seeking either a cafe license or entertainment license, is there a way that could be fast-tracked as to avoid any further delays? Just a question for John on that one. Gormagad.
Okay, thank you. Johnny, come in, John.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. Yeah, I have to say, our environmental health officers and our licensing officers have been extremely busy over the last 2 weeks in anticipation of the relaxation of the COVID restrictions last Friday. And truthfully, in relation to can issues be fast tracked, they are working every hour in order to work with business owners in order to open their premises for outdoor catering in with regard to the restrictions. So I can assure Councillor McCaffrey that everything is being done proactively, I have to say, in working with the businesses. It is, I suppose it is unfortunate that the actual regulations only came to the council on Friday. And we had been working with the businesses in advance of that on the basis of what we thought the regulations would be. So, we have been very sterling, and I can assure Councillor McCaffrey that every application is being fast tracked in this regard because we do know the importance of it for the businesses themselves.
Thanks, John, and thanks to the environmental health team and to our licensing officers. I know that they have been working around the clock. I was just looking to raise that point, but I do appreciate the response, Gormagad.
Yeah, thank you for that. Councillor Swift, you're up next.
Gormagad here, like I didn't think I was up that quick. Anyway, just very quickly on the recommendation, John, 8.3, Heather Drive. I don't want to make any assumptions now. Is the Heather referring to the beautifully coloured plant, or is it Heather, an infamous woman of the area, an independent woman, I'd like to think? I know you've stated there, meaning a rocky place, likely where heather could grow. Could you just give me that clarification, please? Oh, it's in the bog. I see Councillor McAleer. Right, okay. And live on Heather Lane, Catherine. Very good. That answers it, John. You can hold your breath. I'm sure that's correct. Is it? Is it, John?
It is, Chair. You're absolutely right, Councillor Swift. Yes.
Well, I love Heather, so I'm delighted with that name. Beautiful.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Michael Duff, you're up next.
I just on 2.2, Chair. 4 unauthorised developments have been referred to. I was just wanting to check with John if perhaps the 4th of the items listed there, has there not indeed been communication between the property owner and the council? I'm led to believe there has been communication and that's a misrepresentation, but I could be wrong. Thank you, Chair.
Do you want to come in there, John?
Chair, with regard to the individual, whether communication has taken place or not, I suppose it is in relation to information which building control require in order to make an authorised application. And in that sense, there may well have been communication. And what we do with each of these is continue the communication until such times as we do receive the information. And it isn't as such that even after the month, if it's not received within that month period, they have to start the process again. That is not the case. So building control officers do work with the developers on an ongoing basis in order to make sure that all of these become valid applications. And I suppose the only purpose of it is with regard to legislation, is that we are required to, if it isn't received within a month, we are required to put it down that it is unauthorised. But we will continue to work with all of those organisations or all of those developers.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that. Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy that that we have gone back out in some of these, although I can nearly read or feel the frustration of the developer in relation to Mary's Meadow, and obviously not being from that area, he refers to a meadow frequently used for football. Now, I'm not sure if he's actually planning to put his houses on top of the football field or the meadow that was used. I'm just not sure really of the appropriateness of that. So I am glad that it's gone back and it's been addressed and been rectified. Again, the name Churchview, I can understand that there's a church nearby. It still would strike me as a bit of a generic name, but if other members in that area are happy enough with it, then I'm not going to question it. In relation, there's an issue I wanted to raise just in relation to the map and the area in Newton Savile. The outline boundary seems to be quite close to the Rath, which has been identified on the map. And I'm just wondering, in relation to that, has there been involvement with HED or so any of the relevant statutory bodies just in relation to that outline planning there? So it's more a query just along those lines, because you've got the semicircle of the Rath, and I'm just wondering if it's fully exposed there, or if there's anything that we as a council need to be a wee bit mindful of just going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. John, do you have any comment?
Chair, just in relation to that, that would be all picked up through the planning process, and I can assure Councillor McAleer that the development will not be allowed to encroach in any manner or means on the Rath itself.
Perfect. Thank you for that, John. Councillor Rainey.
Well, in relation to the development at Hamlet, I am very happy, and I want to say thank you to John for the work that he has done and coming forward with the name of Rathmore View, and I'm happy to propose the adoption of that, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Councillor Clark, you're up next.
Yeah, Chair. Well, I think it's sort of been covered, the one in Craig and Heather View, but I think Catherine obviously lives in it, and Heather seems sensible enough. I mean, I thought it was a wee bit just generic, but if people are happy enough, I'll go with it. Okay, thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Campbell.
Yes, Harley. Well, I too, I welcome the work of John in relation to kind of reworking and going back to developers. I think in the townland of Hamlet, I think it is acceptable, and I'd be very happy too with the name Rathmore View. It's got a good connection to the Rath, which can be seen as the report rightly states. So I would support that and put on record my thanks to John and the team as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair. My apologies, Chair. I should have declared an interest in item 6.1 in respect of the building control report. One of the approvals involves a family member, so I'd like to declare an interest, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, that's noted. Thank you. Councillor Kelly, Catherine, please. Councillor Kelly.
Sorry, Heather Lane, Heather Drive, Heather View are all built close to Uncreggan, which is surrounded by heather. So it's a very good name for it. And we have private driveway sign that the contractors put up recently, and we are going to be putting up Irish language signs on it as well. So it's aptly named.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Baird.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to pick up something John said about the timing of when the legislative clarity came to the council officers for licensing outdoor premises. It seems to have been rather short. And if you look at the way that was represented in the media, councils, in the plural, seem to get bad publicity. The finger was pointed at them and the officers that they were being over fastidious in their interpretation of the legislation. But if the issue was, as John says, that the department, and I presume it was one of the departments, issued the legislation which had to be administered and enacted by our officers, surely we should be proactive there in pointing out that it wasn't council who caused any lack of issue or restriction, that it was because of the time of the department. Maybe John would like to comment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You want to come in, John?
Yeah, Chair, I think the delay in the regulations being issued was actually due to discussions which were taking place between the Executive Office and the trade itself, in the meaning of what it actually, the regulations with regard to what it meant to really open, and the regulation that, you know, more than 50 or at least 50% of your outside business must not be covered. And I think it was finally decided that it would take the same stance as the smoking legislation from 2007. Now, I think the trade were trying to negotiate that down a little, that it was certainly less than 50%. But I think that's what the delay was in relation to the issuance of the regulations.
Yeah, but my point is that in the public arena, it seems that councils were getting the blame for being either over fastidious or not adhering to regulations and rules. I'm just wondering, is it possible to have any clarification through our social media channels or whatever that councils were not the issue in causing any confusion or lack of license issue?
I think, Chair, in relation to all the businesses that we have been working with in relation to this, is that we have explained it very well. Yes, the media may well have picked up on that it was council who were enforcing it and therefore council who were at fault. But ultimately, I think all of the businesses, and I think in fairness, all of the businesses that we have dealt with are very much aware that it isn't our rules, it isn't our regulations, but it is the Executive Office who set them.
Yep, thank you.
Oh,
for
that's
that.
fair enough then, John. Thanks for that. If our retailers and traders are happy,
Yep.
I think that's what
Yeah.
matters. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Councillor Kyle.
Yeah, Chair, I don't know, do you need a proposer for
No,
the
I have a proposer. I need a seconder, Councillor Kyle.
I'll second the proposal or the recommendations on it. Can I just ask briefly to John? A lot of liquor licensing. I know last night we made a proposal, but that it had to be in the curtilage of the building, and I presume that goes through the county court for the purposes of extending your liquor license. Like it was another kick in the teeth for businesses and restaurants to eat outside, that was not given exemptions.
Yeah.
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 Chair, yeah, the liquor license is not the responsibility of the council. It is the responsibility of the courts to provide a liquor license to businesses.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for that clarification, John. Okay, so that the recommendations are proposed by Councillor Rainey and second by Councillor Coyle, and we're all in agreement, members? Perfect. Thank you. Could I ask all members to lower their hands, please? Thank you. Now, moving on to 6.2, you consider report on estate matters paper B, and that's Celine, please.
Chair, so this is the normal monthly estates matters report. In it, there's items reported on income generating activities to do with council properties, some routine approval matters. There's a brief update as requested on the Grange Park linkage to the Riverside Walk. That is an ongoing project which will require planning and also an internal business case to support the work there. Allied to that, there's also some work going on around development of the play park, the public convenience and the security issues that have been mentioned there most recently at last night's council meeting. So we are looking at a master plan that brings all of that together and certainly will progress consultation on that as appropriate. At 2.8 there is the definition of a resident for purposes of the cemeteries fee, which is in response to some queries that we've had recently. At 2.9 and 2.10, we've requested use of property and retrospective requests, and at 2.11, we have the ceiling information. The very detailed recommendations are set out on page 6, page 7, 5 and 6 there, starting at point 8. I'll not read through them all, they're there for members' attention.
Thank you for that, Celine. And again, I'll take 8.1 and 8.2 together as a combination. Councillor McCann, you're up first.
Apologies, Chair. I thought my hand was down. Sorry, Gavin.
No problem. Councillor Swift.
Sorry, my hand's up from before, Gavin.
Okay. Councillor Campbell, is your hand up from before? Councillor Campbell. Okay, I'd imagine so from before. I'll move on. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Can I thank Celine for her very detailed report, and I welcome all the recommendations and happy to propose accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Curry.
I didn't realise it'd be so quick. I've seen a lot of hands up.
Yeah, all up from previous.
No, Gurmagad Celine for the report. Just to welcome just the bus shelter there, Cairns Hill, in Irvinstown. I do just have a query. I don't know if you'll be able to help me, but it was just and excuse my ignorance, but a 2.6 there, just around the Conacher agreements, the letting of lands. How are the rents calculated? Celine, appreciate you might not know the answer to this, but it just seems that there's some fairly large areas there. Mount Drum is below 13.4. I'm not sure if it's hectares for £2,100, whereas a much smaller area, let's see, at Drumee 2.4 is 1,350, which is more than half, but significantly smaller. Just a wee query around that. I don't know if you can answer it, Celine, but appreciate any clarification.
Through the chair, we did put in place arrangements where, for the most part and where appropriate, we did use an agent to deal with these publicly. There may be some that stem from long-standing arrangements, particularly where there's peppercorn rental there, or a very small rental. There are probably within most of these, and I'm not sure just of the line-by-line detail, but some restrictive covenants in terms of what they can be done, because often the council owns property to ensure that again, often an environmental consideration, that it's not overfarmed, or indeed that there's public access maintained to it. So there are normally some particular circumstances. It's not a straightforward just letting process. We have an agent who does provide support and advice so that this is taken forward in the right way and publicly available, and that was agreed by council previously. But I'll certainly provide maybe some more detail just on the specifics of each of those to members following the meeting.
Thank you for that. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Curry. Thank you, Celine. Councillor Faley, you're up next.
Yes, and thanks, Gavin. Yeah, I was just coming in similar to Councillor Curry there as well, and Celine and thanks, Celine, for the report. It's very detailed, and reading some of them other stuff about Bow and up in the Marble Arch Cave as well. No, I was just wondering as well, like them two bigger farms there, the one 13.4 and 10.2, are they being used for farming activities, men keeping cattle and stuff on them? I know them smaller ones are too small, they're probably nobody farming them. But I remember there used to be a big farm up beside the Marble Arch Caves. Is it still be set or leased out in Conacher, or does that be every 2 years? I just noticed it wasn't on at the year, or does some of them be every 2 years? And some of them, there'd be so much a hectare if they're going to be farmed. I'm just maybe it's just kind of be a nose, it's just wondering what way it was worked out, And is it every 2 years for some of them? Thanks, Celine.
Yeah. Do you want to come in, Celine?
Yes, there would be different periods, and I think the property you're referring to is at Auchnarourke up near Florence Court, and we did have considerable debate and review of that particular one. We did let it out on a 3-year lease there because there's very particular restrictive covenants around the density of farming that can be done on that. But we did establish that it does have some value in terms of the entitlements and claims related to that. But that has been let out on a 3-year basis. I think this is probably the 3rd year that we're coming into. The first year we did, there was some issues around access, which we did manage to work through and resolve. That is a secondary lease or a sublease because we actually take that property from Dara Forestry Service and it is due for renew. That lease, and it's on my list to check into where what the progress is in terms of what we want to do with it in terms of renewing the lease. With Dara Forestry Service and then what the terms of that might be as well. So that's something that does have to be progressed. But we applied a 3-year lease that would take us up to the end of that arrangement. Again, I will provide some additional information for members in relation to this item on the foot of their query.
That's great, thank you, Celine. Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. No, I suppose I'd especially like to welcome items 2.9 and 2.10 on that, and looking forward to seeing the finished product in relation to the videos and the film footage taken on the various council sites. My question relates really to 2.2.2 and 0.3, and I'm just wondering why there's such a discrepancy between the cafe options provided at the Gortin Glens, which just over half the price or twice as much as the coffee or the cafe at the Marble Arch Caves.
Through the chair, we did not set a price for these. We went with expressions of interest and then and with particular terms attached to those expressions of interest as well. And again, asked for interested parties to make their submissions. We're very pleased with the figures that we have received. There's a substantial income there coming through in the Gortin Glens, and it will be needed for the maintenance and upkeep of the park as well. So it is. There is a lower fee is what's been offered in the Marble Arch Caves. I wouldn't like to say that's based on footfall and turnover in that. I just don't know, but it's what the market has dictated in this instance.
Thank you for that, Celine. Thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Hello. Yes, sorry, I had difficulty coming in there. Yeah, I think that was somebody has proposed it, and I'd just like to second it. And I think that the extension of the Grange walkway is to be very much welcome. I know Councillor McElduff has raised this here numerous times. So it's a really good path. It's been really well utilised, and whenever you go on it, you always see 3 or 4 herons. So really appreciate all your work, and hopefully that the plan approval will go through, Celine. So thank you.
That's perfect. Thank you very much. Councillor Thornton.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, this is an old bugbear of mine, is the proposed bus shelter outside Enniskillen bus station. Now, I know in Councillor McElduff's time as Chair, we did get agreement from TransLink to apply to the council for use of a part of the property outside the old Tourist Information Centre. I wonder, has that been progressed? Because there was assurances given at that time. And I know that TransLink had given the assurance, but they obviously had to check with council estates. Has anything further happened on that? Because certainly with the restrictions being lifted to a degree, the travel to Dublin Airport and so on is obviously going to increase from the summer on. So I'm just asking, is there any update on that? Thank you.
Yeah, Celine.
Through the chair, no update, but my recollection of that particular issue, Councillor, was that TransLink had stepped back from that, in that they were concerned that really the public money were going to be used to provide shelter that was going to be largely beneficial to private bus operators. That's my recollection of the last correspondence on it. And whilst they had, yes, I agree, they had previously given an undertaking, but they certainly were stepping back from that, is my recollection of the last correspondence I seen on it. Obviously, the COVID situation has impacted there, certainly on numbers, and whilst we all hope that that will resolve, it certainly hasn't at this stage. Yeah, and well, yeah, that's I will see if there's anything further and whether that issue needs to be resurrected, given the previous council position on it.
Chair, could I make another comment, please?
Yeah, go on ahead. Yeah.
If this isn't going to be progressed by TransLink, can the council address the issue as a community issue? It's the same as bus stops, any shelters anywhere else, because this is a much used service and the whole bus station is closed overnight. So perhaps if TransLink aren't going to move it forward, that the council can look at this issue, and that's what I would propose, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, moving on, Councillor Campbell.
Chair, may I just respond on that, and I presume maybe that would need a seconder. It's probably hit a nerve at the moment, just given some of the issues that I'm dealing with at this point in time, in that we're trying to put a lot of shelters up in a lot of different places, not just bus shelters. We're also making representations about shelters elsewhere, and most recently, I'm sure we will come on to it, request for shelters to do with dog parks, and I know there's talk of covered pitches and that. And I suppose I would appeal to members to be realistic. We have rainfall here between 200 and 250 days of the year. That's the part of the country that we live in. It is an environmental fact, and we will not be able to provide shelters everywhere. And I would be encouraging people to accept the weather conditions that we have, and to bring a brolly and something along those lines. I hope I'm not being facetious there, but it is just, I am concerned about the level of shelters that we are trying to provide. I appreciate that in some instances there is a safety issue, particularly for children in rural areas and on busy roads, and that's a different concern. But we are creating a significant burden for the council to maintain these over a longer period of time. And indeed, I'm not entirely sure whether that's what we should be encouraging, and that we should maybe accept that our environment is the way it is. But that's maybe just additional comment. We can look at whether it is necessary to put a bus shelter there, but it is adjacent to the existing bus park. I know there have been suggestions as well that people do wait in cars there over whenever it is for the nighttime bus routes, but also again, if that is what is needed by our public and voted for by our members, well, then that's something that we can look to progress.
Okay, thank you for that, Celine. Councillor Campbell. Councillor Campbell. Are you there, Councillor Campbell? Okay, moving on to Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just coming in on that Enniskillen because it obviously wasn't directly, but I'm happy that it's been raised by Councillor Thornton, and I'm happy to second his proposal. I do think we have to take measures here if, unfortunately, TransLink is not going to develop this. It is essential. Like, this is the main bus station in Enniskillen, and it is locked after hours. I don't agree with that either, but the reality is people could be caught in the rain and then are spending a long bus journey in the rain, sodden, and we just got to modernize. It's not acceptable for people to have to sit rain sodden in this county, in this council area because of austerity. So I'm happy to second it, and I also think we should raise with TransLink the health and safety aspects involved of them not facilitating users of this facility. And the issue about privateers, thankfully, we're not going to have the hiving off of the lucrative sites. It looks like runs for a little bit anyway.
but we need to see TransLink stepping up for this community. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Coffey and Councillor Blake.
Yeah, just to agree with my fellow Enniskillen councillors there about the need for some kind of a shelter there adjacent to the bus depot, because if TransLink aren't going to facilitate the need for a shelter there, especially when we're aware that the Dublin Airport bus, the Dublin bus, departs there like 2:05 in the morning, and sometimes in a wet and miserable night, and people can be then left gathering in the doorway of the old tourist information centre, that I think that there's definitely failure on the part of TransLink to accept this, but we also have to be aware of the fact that not only are people being lifted there, they're also being dropped off there, and the difficulty at that time of the night to get taxis home and can be left standing in the rain. So I think that if TransLink can't facilitate it, then ourselves as a council will have to look at it. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Blake. Councillor Baird.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I hope my townie colleagues don't mind me coming in support of them. But I'm just listening to Celine saying that TransLink's logic in not supplying the bus shelter was that they weren't going to put something up that private operators could use. As far as I'm aware, the private operator that applied for the licence to provide a service from Enniskillen to Belfast was refused. So if that's their logic on reason for not putting the shelter there, that logic is removed, because the only people using the bus centre will be people travelling with TransLink and the Republic's bus service to Dublin Airport. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Baird, and thank you, members, for that discussion. The recommendations are proposed by Councillor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald, and we're all in agreement. Thank you. And the separate proposal by Councillor Thornton is seconded by Councillor Coffey, and we're also in agreement. Okay, thank you, members. Moving on to 6.3, to consider a report on Ecclesville Forest Fintna, Paper C, and that's Celine.
Chair, this was requested at last week's policy and was last week, 2 weeks ago now, Policy and Resources Committee, and this is a more detailed report on the Ecclesville Forest. I'm going to ask my colleague Stephen Forrest just to take us through some of the detail of this, please.
Thank you, Celine, and through the chair, and good evening, members. I suppose by way of introduction for some members that maybe aren't familiar with this estate or asset that the council owns, it's largely it's a 77-hectare site in the west of Fintna, and largely can be broken down into 3 areas. You've got the formal park immediately adjacent to the town of Fintna. You've got the equestrian centre, and then you've also got the forest element. Forest element is probably the largest area at 41 hectares approximately, and this report then principally deals with this. Now, there's 2 elements within this. First one being the Sustainable Forest Management Plan, and then also the second one, the green space development of the forest. Dealing with the first one, the Sustainable Forest Management Plan, and key to that is the managed transition of the forest, and with the objectives of restructuring the forest, which is patch clear fell in four areas in 5 years. The second is to protect and enhance the biodiversity and sustainable replanting. The third is to enhance the amenity and landscape features. Fourth is to maintain and protect any special features that exist within the forest, namely wraths and features such as veteran trees. There are safety issues within the forest currently with what we refer to as wind throw, and that's where trees are starting to fall now because they're actually reached heights now where instability from wind is prevalent. And we're also encountering invasive laurel species along with the loss in value of the potential timber through disease. And the second part, the green space development, that essentially covers the ecological, cultural and social opportunities. And that looks at access, amenity, recreation, environmental, educational and historical and heritage opportunities. And consultation is going to be key to this element of looking at the management of this area. And that'll be done through a working group and the formation. This proposal demonstrates that we as a council are committed to ensure the use of Ecclesville Forest as a green space and diversely managed forest. And the Forest Management Plan will form an integral and key element to the park development strategy for the entire estate and incorporate into further development proposals identified following community consultation. Now, there are financial implications to this. The costs are that we will have to employ a specialist advisor on the forest management and the management of the process, but that'll be offset clearly with the gains in the timber sales, as demonstrated in the documents. The recommendations are that the council notes the update report and approves the forest management plan, manage the safety risk of the forest and restocking with native broadleaf trees, and also secondly notes the commencement and development of the community consultation process in regard to the long-term strategy and development plan for the entire Eccleswell estate area. Happy to take questions, Chair. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you for that, Stephen. First up, Councillor Baird.
Apologies, my hand must be up from before. I do apologise.
No problem. No problem. Thank you. Councillor Garrity.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thank you, Garvin. And from the outset, I can say thank you to Stephen. In general, Stephen does a lot of work and helps me out greatly, and I'm an awful torture to him. But this report is very exciting for the Ecclesville area and particularly the people of Fintona. I know people are very excited about it, and I know it's the early stages yet. I do know that I've worked with Stephen and we've had some, let's just say, fruitful engagements with some of the public. And just for an example, Stephen, some of the work that has been done on around the area, separate to this, I think it was the 24th of April, Saturday morning, pictures from the Ecclesville area and a small message which ends with "good job FODC." Now, we don't get that all the time, but it's a genuine here and we'll send it on to you. But this is going to be tremendous for the area. It will enhance what the beauty that's there and manage it. It's one of those things that I'm not very keen that we don't spend too much money, but as Stephen rightly said, the cost will be offset by the benefits. We need to do this right and that we're doing it correctly. I'm not an expert and I would like to make sure that we're going about this in the correct manner. I appreciate the engagement that he's done to date with people and looking into his forest management plan, and it will be nothing but a benefit to that area. So just want to thank him greatly. I am happy, Chair, to propose the recommendation on the back of that. And I look forward to what legs it will develop going forward. But just as a supplementary and a slight related issue and a separate proposal, just if I can throw in, but it's an alternative one. This is, we have beautiful areas in our district. We all know that within Fermanagh and Omagh. And we have another one within our area, but maybe not within our ownership as such, which is Seskinore Forest Park, which we have referenced before within this chamber. But just briefly, Chair, the proposal would be, although it is owned at the minute, as we know, by Forest Service. I think it was discussion to some of the directors, there may have been a possibility to get some funding for a feasibility study to see how it could be developed. And I know we had engagement with Forestry to see reports back. Just propose if that could be investigated, if there's any proposal. This would be very much long down the line, and I appreciate that. But I think if plant the seed on these things, and hopefully they will grow. And if there's any update, but that's just something we could do as a sideline going forward. And as I say, Garvin, it'll be early stages, but I think that's a bit of untouched potential as well, and it'd be good just to start them things flowing. But happy to propose recommendations, and thank Stephen again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gary. I'll just bring John in on that separate issue.
Yes, Chair. Thank you. Just in relation to Seskinore Forest Park, I had a meeting with the community association out there in relation to developing it as a community asset and maybe using DARA TRIPSI funding in order to develop paths or whatever for the community in order to make it accessible. And it's a fantastic asset. So it is in our district. Councillor Garrity is absolutely right. We don't have ownership of it. The Forestry Service do have, but discussions have already commenced with the Forestry Services in order to maybe the likelihood of entering into a license agreement like we have with so many of our forest areas in the district. I know there was a meeting earlier on today with the National Heritage Lottery on the site in Seskinore, and I don't know the outcome of that yet. But there are some fantastic buildings and whatever there, and it is something that we would be keen to support. Although maybe not financially, if we could get funding from third party funds, it certainly would be a great asset to the Seskinore area. So that is in hand, and it is a long-term project, Chair.
Yeah, through the chair, thanks for that, John, and it is a great history to tell it, so that we look forward to that as well. But thank you, Chair.
Yep. Thank you very much. Councillor McCann, you're up next.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thanks to John and Celine for bringing this report to us following my request at PNR there last month. There's a lot of information in this and a lot of positive information and a positive work planned. I've also took an opportunity to read through just the Ecclesville Forest Management Plan 2021 to 2031 and the referenced outdoor recreation NA document, Ecclesville Forest, a green space. It runs to over 130 pages. But contained in that document is a lot of positive work being planned for the Ecclesville area, and it's very, very welcome. It's great to hear some of the ideas being suggested for the wider forest, including volunteer ranger programs, community conservation programs, community events, and guided walks. And I'm glad to see that the trails will be upgraded and enhanced as part of this work. Since lockdown commenced, more and more people are starting to explore the forest, and the poor condition of the trails has been fed back to myself. So I'm really glad to see that these will be upgraded to community trails, they're being called, and this can only encourage people into the forest to enjoy the natural heritage of the area. I welcome that the Ecclesville Forest has been identified as a location to roll out the Forest Schools programme, which is an exciting programme just being commenced by the council, and this will have a huge potential for our young people to learn about the nature of the area, you know, the various trees, species, etc. that reside there, and to enjoy the wild play areas that's planned for the area. So, you know, it's recognised that there's massive potential for the forest area and the wider estate, and it's great to see these ideas finally being brought forward. I mentioned the report there compiled by Outdoor Recreation NI, and the theme throughout that is connecting the community with their forest for their health, well-being and education. And I note that there's been a fair bit of engagement with the community at that time. That document's dated March 18. And while it's only 3 years ago since that engagement took place, it's important that they have their say as well as this work progresses. And I welcome that the need for that ongoing community engagement is referenced within the report here tonight. You know, so there's a lot of good work planned for the forest in the years ahead. And just before I second the recommendations, can I just get an assurance from Stephen there that the felling mentioned in this report is now necessary to mitigate the threats identified by Forest Service to the forest?
Do you want to come in there, Stephen?
Yeah, and through the chair, yes, that is the case. Indeed, this report was originally drafted in 2013, and there was a felling plan identified then. And the primary driver really is safety, and as well as that, it was planted as a sustainable crop. So it has a shelf life as such, and has to be removed. And now is an opportunity to not only reduce the risk to the public, but also, you know, to enhance the area in terms of biodiversity and accessibility for the community. Thank you.
That's great, Stephen. It's just that I think that message should be, you know, really reinforced that this work is essential to the management of the forest. So yeah, happy to second that report and congratulate Stephen for his hard work to date, and look forward to seeing things progress in the future. Thanks, folks.
That's great, Councillor McCann, thank you. Okay, members, we have it proposed and seconded, and there's still quite a number of hands, so if members could keep their comments brief, please, because it is proposed and seconded. I'll take it we're all in agreement. So next up is Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just I think overall this is a sensible approach. I think the clear felling of Norwegian pine and Sitka spruce is only a good thing if we replace them with the more indigenous species and broadleaves and so on. I two questions really. When I read the summary, it did come across quite driven by commercial. The mechanism that's been approached in a forestry management plan, while I do understand the underlying tendency is towards replacing quite crop monocultures with more diverse forms of plantings. But there's a couple of questions really. One was the ancient semi-natural forest or woodland rather. It's only I know it's a half of a hectare. And also there's, I think there's 5 hectares of planted ancient woodland. I would be quite concerned that the felling would not in any way, certainly clear-cut felling of those would not proceed in any sense, because well, even if you replant, there's always a danger. The second issue is on page 5 there about the remedial tree surgery to extend lifespans, which again, to me, is a bit of a concerning idea, because we all know the most important tree for nature is the snag, which is a dead tree. And I'm just wondering whether it is not a good idea that we leave the trees as natural as we can get them, so that there's a diversity of age as well, and that if there are dead trees, we shouldn't be cutting limbs off them. We should be allowing them to facilitate the maximum diversity and biodiversity. So I just, those two issues there. I think overall it's a positive development, but those two queries. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Stephen, do you want to come in on them?
Yes, thank you. And again, through the chair, yes, absolutely. The existing broadleaf stands will be protected, because ultimately that's what we're trying to achieve here. Graham stands will be obviously identified and clearly protected during the felling process. With regard to the second issue then, the lifespans, the remedial dead trees, there's a lot of veteran trees in this state, the remnants probably of the original house development of the gardens. Some of these are in extremely poor condition. What will happen whenever we clear fell round these trees? They become a bit more vulnerable because they're now exposed to wind, and they would have become weakened by the protection, obviously, of the trees surrounding them. So what we have to do, we have to sympathetically assess each one in turn, and obviously remove any limbs that may pose a threat, because after all, this is a public park. Now, obviously, any limbs that are removed will be replacing around the forest as part of deadwood for the regeneration of that area. So it's getting that balance between safety and accessibility to the forest, but also retaining the biodiversity, and that's the challenge, and it'll be done on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, thank you for that, Stephen. Councillor McAleer, you're next.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for that further input there, Stephen. I think when I read a report and it's talking about trees and it's referring to economic maturity and economic felling age, it's quite alarming that we're putting a financial or monetary value on nature. It's a very interesting report. I think there are good points and there are some points that I would maybe be less inclined to agree with. I think the point that Councillor O'Coffey raises is very important in relation to both the planted ancient woodland and the ancient semi-natural woodland, and that obviously has to be protected as best we can, because once something of that age is gone, that's it, gone for good. And we're familiar with issues such surrounding ancient woodland and places like Craighall Rocks and that we need to be very mindful as a local body. I think as well the move away from this monoculture, as Donal again said, in terms of the Sitka spruce, can only be a welcome development. In relation to the upgrades or the financial upgrades that are going to be upgrading roads, is that roads external to the site, or is that within the forest site? Is it working on existing pathways, or is it creating new roads really through the forest? Because again, if it's a new road through the forest, that would be something that I would be quite concerned with. So maybe if we could get a wee bit more detail on that.
Okay. Do you want to come in on that, Stephen?
Yeah, certainly, and thanks through the chair. Yes, this is something, I mean, it's the upgrade of the roads that'll be necessary probably within the park. Tentative discussions with some experts in Forest Service have indicated that the location of the old house, which is like an overspill car park, the question area would be the main load handling area. Now, what there are devices available, forwarders they call them, and these are small transferable units that move stealthily, shall we say, through the forest, causing the least amount of disruption to systematically pick out and remove trees. So that'll become as part of the overall plan, and that's where we bring the expert consultant in to advise us on that, to avoid the minimal amount of disruption to the forest. Interestingly enough, the report does identify that, particularly in among the raths, which are protected obviously structures as scheduled monuments, there is a suggestion that horses would actually be used to remove the trees over the raths. And namely, the old technology in using horses proves the least disruption to the soil surface. and it actually can be doubled up as a feature then, as a public attraction to see horses actually physically remove trees the way it would have been done years ago. So it'll all be actually put into the plan as such, and basically designed out and thought out. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Stephen. Okay, remember we've 6 speakers to go, and I'm just mindful of time, and we have another big report coming next. So if members could be very brief if possible. So Councillor Rainey up next.
Thank you, Chair. And certainly this is exciting for Ecclesville. This has been long talked about, and my thanks as well to Stephen for the work that he has done on the forward planning over a period of years. I think he asked me to be brief, but I have to say this, that we had a similar plan back in Omagh District Council's time, maybe not as extensive, that Canon Maran was really involved in. And because it didn't happen over a period of maybe 2 to 3 years, he took the West Tyrone councillors in and interrogated them as to if they hadn't died, they must be in a deep sleep. And I'm glad to see that this project is really back on the cards again. And it has been already proposed and seconded, and I want to support that. Relation to Seskinore, yes, we did have a very satisfactory meeting this morning with the Heritage Lottery, and they did once again have an extensive walk around the forest area, which is somewhere in the region of 100 acres, and looked at the walled garden. And we had a photograph of the walled garden 100 years ago to this year, when it was in full bloom and flowers. And it in itself would be a huge project to revitalize it and bring and restore it. So all in all, we're pleased. Maybe it's moving slowly but surely.
Yeah.
And I'm delighted that it's no longer talk, it's
Mhm.
now become action. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Rainey. Councillor Michael Duff.
Thank you, Chair. I'll congratulate the two Stephens. I'll be politically partisan here as well. Councillor McCann has brought a great focus to this politically within the council, the whole Fintna aspect of it. Can I ask the Fintna Show Society, I would say Councillor Rainey and officials of the council and are well in a position to answer this question. Does the Fintna Show Society lease a section of the estate? You know, is a section of the estate under the control of the Fintna Show Society? And then secondly, to say that there are holes in the wire which lead down to the river in the estate. They're, significant holes. Now, either you have a facilitated access down to the river, proper, or you close that up if there's danger. But there's two kind of large holes punched in the wire separating the river and the Ecclesville estate. And finally, just to say well done to the council on playing a facilitator role in relation to the development of Seskinore Forest. And some of this started some months ago, do you remember, whenever we had an informal meeting with Forestry Service, and we were praising them for initiatives and praising ourselves as a council for our initiatives. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Michael Duff. Celine, you like to come in on that point?
Yes, Chair and councillors. Yes, Fintna Show Society do have a lease of a small section of the estate. It's a long-standing arrangement. I understand it's on a peppercorn rental, and there's recently been some queries around it, but that is correct. It's not a substantial sum, a very small sum that is paid in relation to that. I'm aware of the holes in the wire leading to the river, seen them in the last week or so, and yeah, there's been some vandalism in this area again, another unfortunate theme. And I believe the fence has previously been repaired and has again been damaged. So we will have to look at and maybe a facilitated access is the way to go, but it is a bit of a steep drop. So you know, again, there would be safety considerations there. But we'll certainly log that one for further review. We had repaired them, but they were damaged again at really out of hours, I think. So I hope that clarifies the members' queries.
That's great,
Thank
Celine.
you.
Thank you for that. Now, Councillor
Chairman,
Wilson,
can
you're
I
up next.
comment?
I'm trying to get through all the speakers, Councillor Rainey, so unfortunately not. Councillor Wilson, you're up next.
Yes, Chair. Well, I, as one of...
Oh no, are you going again, Councillor Wilson?
Move on to Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm not a West Tyrone councillor, but I want to support the recommendations, and I want to thank Stephen for his very comprehensive report and all the work that he has done. I think Councillor Gardaí made comments there with regard to Seskinore Forest.
Yeah.
And she may have made a proposal on that. And she
did, yeah.
I would like to second it if it's not already seconded.
Perfect, thank you.
We carry on at that work with regard to Seskinore as well. Happy with the report, Chair, and happy to support it all. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Campbell.
Caherly. Well, I do want to thank the officers. Again, I support the recommendations of the report, absolutely. And I thank the officers for their attention and their work in liaison with Forestry Service initially on the development of Seskinore Forest. I had requested a report be brought back in December PNR meeting, so I very much welcome the fact that process is moving. It's an exciting prospect that Seskinore Forest can be developed, and I look forward to the next stage and bringing that forward, Chairman.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Irvine.
Thanks very much, Chair. I think Stephen has done an excellent job in regard to the report. The proposals are well managed. I think we've got to appreciate it needs to be done sooner rather than later, rather than having a report and just sitting on it. A quick comment, that the majority of trees planted in the estate were for commercial harvesting. So whilst we may not like commercial harvesting and economics may be a dirty word to some, we have to actually take what it is and do it. And the management plan is looking for a different planting regime, and that's to be welcomed. What I do see now in regard to Councillor Thompson and Councillor Garrity and a few other councillors talking about Seskinore Forest, there seems to be a tendency now, and I've mentioned this before, that Forest Service, whilst maintaining the ownership of all their commercial forest areas, both those that are closed and those that are open to recreational pursuits, seem willing enough for local district councils or borough councils to take them on, but there is no transfer of any funding in regard to the provision that they once took upon themselves, that we now seem to be taking on ourselves in regard to health and well-being and recreational pursuit. I think this council, maybe along with other councils who seem to be taking up this banner, need to lobby Stormont for a funding stream to actually take this issue on board, because it is not necessarily a core legislative duty of the council to do. I agree it falls within one of the community plan streams under health and well-being, but again, it is not one of our core details. And over the next couple of years, finances are going to be fairly tight. I've also noticed that there is an uptake in regard to community organisations drawing down funding for trails and everything like that. And we have the issue of long-term maintenance in regard to these, which creates a pressure on our revenue stream. So I totally agree with the direction we're going. I do not agree that we have to self-fund this. I think we have got to put a case up to actually get a funding stream coming down from central government to actually fund the revenue stream. We're all right with capital grants. We seem to be able to draw down capital money, but we are falling far short in regard to revenue streams. I'm not trying to throw cold water on this. I actually welcome the initiative, but I want to see us properly funded for it without jumping in, because central government will be happy for us to pick up the tab, but unless we scream for the money, we won't get it. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, and I'll just go back finally to Councillor Wilson to see if you can say a few words now. You there, Councillor Wilson? No, I'm going to have to move on. Okay, members, that is proposed and seconded, and we're all in agreement. Thank you, members. Okay, moving on now to 6.4, to consider report on waste management issues, paper D, and that's Celine again.
Chair, members, this report really focuses on recently published waste statistics which relate to the period of Q3 2020-21. So that's the period from October to December of last year, 2020. I've spent a bit of time on this, and I hope you'll allow me just to take you through some of the aspects of this paper in detail, because you know, I'm using it as an example to try and understand the story of waste for us, for Fermanagh District Council. And in terms of that story, there's good parts and there's less good parts to it. So I think it's very useful to try and see how it works through, and you know what actually happens to our waste, and where how it breaks down. These figures have been validated, so they do go through a process, and ultimately they're produced by NISRA. It's not helpful that there's a number of different terminologies and different definitions for different aspects of waste that are used in relation to various different targets, but those are set out for you there at 1.3, and you can see where those are referred to later in the report. And I also included at 1.4 a diagram that I have found useful to try and understand sort of the waste hierarchy and the waste management focus, because as you can see there, the first and the best approach is prevention and minimisation of waste. Then we move into reuse, and then to recycling, and then at the other end of the scale, and the least favoured options are around energy recovery and disposal, which ultimately means landfill. So at 2.1, there's some key statistics there for Northern Ireland for this 3-month period. And basically what they are telling us is that by comparison, there's two ways we can look at this for comparison purposes. We can look at it and compare ourselves to other councils, and then we can also look at it and compare against our own previous performance, so that we can see what the trend is. The trend in Northern Ireland terms is a significant increase in waste arising, so that's the amount of waste that's generated. So relative to the same period in 2019, there was an increase of waste collected of 9.2%, just shy of 10%. At 2.2, I've given the breakdown there of for each of the different councils, and you can see in the first column it's how much is collected from households, and then how much is collected mainly through our household recycling centres. So of the 255,000 tonnes of waste collected in that 3-month period in Northern Ireland, in Fermanagh and Omagh, that for the figure was 14,844 tonnes of waste. You can see that is the lowest figure in Northern Ireland, but it is an increase of 1,601 tonnes on the previous period last year, which is a 12% increase, which is more than the Northern Ireland average of 9.2%. If we go over the page to, I suppose, still on the same subject, obviously we know that Fermanagh and Omagh is one of the smaller councils in terms of population. So what does that actually mean in terms of the waste generated? So we've looked at it here per head of population, and then also per household. So that tells us a better story, because we can see there that per household in that 3-month period, we have generated 110 kilos of waste per household. That compares quite favourably. It's actually the second lowest of all the councils in Northern Ireland. So our 14,844 is amongst the lowest per capita, per head of population, and then also per household. And you can see the data there about the number of households that that we have, 45,777, and that equates to then 283 kilos per household. You can also use that as a baseline to multiply that up for the year. So that tells us then that each household is producing about 1,300 plus kilos of waste per year, which again by anybody's standard is still quite a substantial amount of waste. So that's the waste that's being generated first of all. Then we look at what is happening to that, and the next key information is around the recycling rate. So the recycling rate for Fermanagh and Omagh for this 3-month period is 47.2%. That's the household recycling rate. So that's how much of the waste that's generated in households then is actually recycled, 47.2%. That is slightly down on the same 3-month period in 2019 when it was 47.6%. So it's down 0.4 of a percent for us, but that's less than the Northern Ireland average, because you can see that the Northern Ireland figure has dropped from 48.4%, so we're lagging behind in 2019, and that's dropped down to 45.8%, which is a 3.1% reduction. You can see how that is spread across the different councils. That's actually quite concerning in overall Northern Ireland terms, because the target for household recycling rate, one of the key targets, is to achieve a 50% household recycling rate across Northern Ireland. That was achieved in 1920 overall, and you can see how that quarter was moving well towards it. But these figures would certainly suggest that we're away from that, moving away from that figure, and that recycling rate is reducing overall. Obviously, we can say that COVID issues and behaviours have had an impact there. Specifically, I suppose we've had more people at home, so that has increased the waste. With schools at home, there's perhaps some more waste lunch and food waste has been generated. And obviously then there's also the packaging waste that we have discussed before, and maybe some elements of clear outs and that as well that households are doing. And maybe not getting that through in terms of recycling just as much. Moving on from that, then we have some further analysis then on the household waste recycling and where that is going. So some of the information then for this actually comes from our waste processors. So the dry recycling rate, the next table at the top of page 6 gives us a dry recycling rate, a composting rate, and then the landfill rate for each of the councils. And again, this tells us a lot about the story of waste for us. So we have recorded the second highest household dry recycling rate at 28.9%, and that has increased again from 26.5% in 2019. And that's really, I suppose, as a result of effective sorting and also the disposal arrangements that we have in place. But conversely, we also recorded relatively low composting rate and a high landfill rate, and that's then where we've gone next in terms of examining the composting rate first of all, and then moving on from that. So the next table at the top of page 7 gives you the information then about, I suppose, really about composting. And two key issues just to highlight from that. First of all, we're the only council who is sending food waste directly to anaerobic digestion. And most of the other councils haven't developed that route yet, but we think that is a positive development. The second thing to highlight is that ourselves and one other council, being Derry City and Strabane, do not currently collect mixed garden waste. So if you think of all of this, and we're focusing on the food waste, which is the legislative requirement. So if you think of all of the figures here, you could collect more waste, by collecting the garden waste and then have an increased statistic here for composting and overall waste collection. But I would highlight that the cost of actually collecting waste is between 80 and £100 per tonne. That's the cost of the bins, lorries, and the the waste collection service. So immediately in seeking to collect more waste, you're going to increase, obviously, in the first table, the amount of waste that's generated, and you're also going to increase the collection costs around that. So if you go back to look at the hierarchy, again, it's important that we do have and encourage composting at home and other reuse there. So that's an important element at the top end of the most favoured approaches, so that you are looking to minimise the waste that is actually collected, and that's the most advantageous position. But you can see clearly in that table there's where the waste collection is, and a number of other councils do collect a lot of green waste, and then that does go to recycling and does help some of the statistics that are provided there. The final category then that we've looked at in more detail is around landfill and then the RDF, the refuge derived fuel. And I suppose the key point there is that at this point in time where waste management is, both of these still are a feature and have a role to play. So we're talking here about, well, I'm going to say the grey bins or the black bins that we have, and what happens with those. For ourselves and a couple of other councils, there is still an element of landfill, which is the least preferred option. But landfill, we have a functioning landfill site that is being managed through an engineered process to closure. And although it is a very expensive means of disposal, it will remain a feature for the council over the short term until we properly manage that landfill to closure. That said, we have recorded a decrease in this quarterly period of 20% on the previous year. And that now, it means that we're still sending 35% of that waste to landfill, but it is down from 44% on the same period last year, but is above the Northern Ireland average there, which is at 23%. So you can see where we sit there. For councils who don't send waste to landfill, essentially most of that unsorted, non-recyclable waste is sent to RDF, energy recovery. And again, you can see the percentages there for each of the councils, and it is quite significant. So really, until behaviours around recycling significantly change, these aspects, although they're on the less favourable side of the equation, will still feature for some period of time. We have increased that RDF amount, and that is really trying to manage the landfill within the NILUS targets, which again, there's the two of those do correlate. So the conclusions really of this report, I hope that it is well placed, and that we do expect that there will be the annual report for 2021. So this does then give us that insight and understanding to these figures. I've highlighted that there could be underperformance in Northern Ireland terms around some of the key targets, and if that is the case, there may be penalties, there may be financial implications. I don't know that those would be levied at a council level. It could be a Northern Ireland level, or indeed a UK level. I've highlighted some information about the cost of collection, and separately we can look at the cost of disposal. And then I suppose there is very much other considerations and challenges around landfill site management and the reputational issues around sustainability in this whole area as well. So really this information is at this point for noting, members, and I hope I'll be able to deal with your queries in relation to that as well.
Thank you very much, Elaine, for that excellent report. Just before I take speakers, Councillor Fitzgerald has declared an interest as being a member of the Tullyvar Committee. Okay, so I'm very mindful of time, speakers, so if you could be very brief. Sorry?
Sorry, Chair, Councillor
Yeah.
Thompson here. Can I
Yeah.
declare an interest in Tullybar? Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, Councillor Coffey, you're up first. Be brief if possible.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First of all, a question really around the. It is acknowledged in the report that the amount of home composting is not collated in these figures, and I'm wondering whether that could be resolved, because certainly I have 2 composters, and I'm wondering how many others do that, because I'm sure that actually would be quite beneficial to our statistics. Having said that, overall the figures are, as you say, quite mixed. And in particular, there has been a dramatic increase in the amount of waste that we are incinerating. And I think it's important to call it what it is, incinerating waste. It's very bad for the environment, just as bad as landfill, of course. And I think what we need to do, and I'd like to propose that we have a paper coming forward on options really to dramatically increase the variety of materials that we can see recycled, but also to extend the brown bins across the district, and to bring forward a collection of green waste, which I think you referenced was something that we wasn't doing. So I think all these options should be considered. If we don't collect green waste in particular, what is happening in that green waste? And I would suggest that most of that green waste is actually being burnt or dumped or something like that, and it's not good for the environment. So it is far better that we compost this waste and take responsibility for our environment. And I don't think that relatively small costs, because the overall budget in this is quite large to start off with, should be an obstacle. So I'd like to see a report come back on that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McAleer, you're up next.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, happy to second that proposal. I think just being very mindful of some of the figures, which are, I suppose, quite startling, as the directors pointed out there. Sending 35 or over 35% of our waste to landfill, which is almost 12% above the current average, is deeply concerning given the current climate emergency. And again, following on from the programme broadcast on from dispatches in relation to the dirty truth about rubbish and questions around that, and why I had raised a number of questions that I'm waiting answers on, and hopefully I can follow up on that outside of the meeting. But the idea that was reported in that programme was that the stats that are being presented maybe from councils, and I'm not in any way singling this council out, because from the programme it seemed to be something that's really done across the board. When you're dealing with recycling figures, it's actually what's collected at the curbside intended for recycling, and that the actual percentage of waste that ends up being recycled is actually much less. And I know that's something that's of deep concern. And again, it made reference throughout, and one of the contributors, who is a professor at the University of Central Lancashire, referred to the fact that it's cheaper to incinerate than it is to recycle, and that's really an incentive for different industries to move in relation to that. The idea that incineration is becoming the energy generation process which actually emits the greatest amount of CO2, which is even worse than coal production, and that is on track to overtake landfill as a more carbon intensive process by 2025, needs to be addressed as a matter of utmost urgency. So it's a very, very concerning report, and it's trying to figure out how we can do better, how we can get our district to do better. And I think the idea of providing brown bins, providing that element that we can compost more, that we can recycle more, as opposed to sending rubbish to incineration or to landfill, has to be really addressed as a matter of urgency. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McAleer. Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to record my thanks to Celine for her excellent report, and also for her in-depth analysis of the statistics. Chair, this report is a bit like the curate's egg, good in parts, but there are some parts of the report that really are very concerning. I truly accept the impact that the COVID restrictions have had on our waste production. As the report says, more people shopping online and all the excessive packaging that is associated with that, increased shopping for food, increased food waste, and so on. So I accept that, and for that reason, I think the figures are probably slightly skewed. But I think that, given that waste disposal is one of the biggest costs to this council, I think that we have to seriously look at how we process our waste. And in particular, we certainly do not want to incur infraction fines for missing our statutory NILUS targets. I am very disappointed to read that as part of the council's plan for dealing with waste, we are still going to be relying on our landfill sites for up to 5 years. I think the report says 2 to 5 years. Chair, I would sincerely hope that we could bring that time down. My honest belief is that the days of burying our waste in the ground are over and should be over. I know there is controversy about managing waste through refuse-derived fuel, RDF, or incineration, as other members have referred to it. And I certainly would be horrified at the thought of any waste which is potentially capable of being recycled, that it would be disposed of in this way. But if you look at the waste pyramid, by far the most important thing for us to do is to look at the prevention of waste. And I have raised on many occasions previously in the council the whole issue of packaging and excessive packaging, which is completely unnecessary. I would rather have slightly damaged goods than a whole rake of packaging, which is so damaging to our environment. Our waste disposal, I'll be wrapping up here, Chair, shortly. I would like to have more information, and I support the calls for a paper to be brought back on alternative methods of dealing with residual waste rather than going to landfill. I want to learn more about RDF and modern technology and the impact of this on the environment, because we need to be well informed before we can make decisions. But I want to formally propose the report, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Could I get a seconder for no? Sorry.
That's John McCullough. I can't put my hand up, Chair. I would just like to come back with a few points. Number one, on the landfill side, that we as a council have responsibility to actually manage and conclude the profiling of that site. And that requires a certain amount of tonnage, which we can only manage through a number of years to get the profile correct, to finish the site and to cap it. On the challenge of RDF and residual waste, there is an acceptance that RDF is the least worst option. Landfill is where we don't want to go to, but at the moment there are no options available. The technologies out there and the processes for separation and the use or the packaging that's on the market that people are purchasing, there's no technologies out there to process and recycle a lot of this material. And that's what the overall sort of concept is supposed going forward the next number of years, is to look what governments can do to actually minimize and reduce the materials that are going to packaging that cannot be recycled. There is a major issue, and I accept all the comments been made, but what I do say when we talk about the waste hierarchy, that is the waste hierarchy that we as an organisation must follow to meet our targets. And yes, if there are opportunities there to try to minimise, we will look at and we will try to improve the figures. Just to add on to that, in the UK, both England and Scotland have suffered worse, and their recycling figures have dropped more significantly. And that the target for the 50% recycling is a UK-wide target, and it's the devolved administrations that may be subject to these fines for not meeting the targets. And at this moment in time, until we find out probably toward the later part of this year or even next year as to how the UK in general report on the overall recycling figure. So there is work to be done, I accept that, but also the council themselves have a limit as to what they actually can do. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that, John. Councillor Michael Duff, if you could be brief, please.
Yes, one sentence. Can I ask John, and I ask this respectfully, does the council remove grass when they cut, say, for example, grass around the play area, such as that in Gort Rush Park and the Derry Road. Noma, it's just a local resident has asked me sometimes why the grass is left to lie. Thank you.
Yes, sorry, but Councillor, the frequency from my recollection on working on the grass is cut. There's 16 to 20 cuts per year, and the cut is supposed to be said that it doesn't leave a heavy degree of grass behind, and it uses a mulch actually to refertilize the ground. There are occasions, I presume, whenever it's very heavy rain and maybe the grass cutters can't get at it, then there is a buildup of grass. But no, the grass is not lifted, and that's the answer. Sorry.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you for that, John. Thank you, Councillor McAuliffe. Councillor Maguire.
Thank you very much, Garvin. And again, just a one-liner, hopefully. Just in the overall report, as I say, there's worrying figures in it, but we as a committee are focusing on the statistics. And what I'm sitting here thinking is all this waste is generated by the people that live in our district. And I'm just wondering, and I'm sure we've asked this before and we've got comprehensive answers to it, but I'm mindful that are all our citizens fully aware of the recycling and which bin it should go into? Or are schools being inundated with literature and education materials to educate the next generation what not to do? And again, I'm thinking again to the littering along the roads where we were told that such a large figure of our rates is spent on that. We're trying to analyse the figures and criticising some of them and worrying about stuff going to incineration. But I really think we need to get back to the basics of educating the people in the district to actually produce no waste. I think that's what, sorry, his name's gone out of my head now, but when he was asked what was the one thing he could do to improve the environment, and it's just produce no waste. So I'd just like maybe a report on how much engagement we have with our citizens out there. And I'm also mindful that we as councillors should be putting the message out as much as we can. I did try to get one into the local paper, but they didn't carry it on me there. But it's the citizens are producing the waste. We're trying to manage it. Are they being informed fully, or maybe that's where we should be focusing some of our attention? That's in my world. That's my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor. Where do you want to come in there, Celine?
Yes, Chair. Well, I suppose a couple of comments just in response to the issues raised there. This is a snapshot. It's a 3-month snapshot. I would prefer to wait to see the 2021 figures in their entirety, and then we would be able to give a much better trend analysis around a number of these issues. I also, I suppose there was a workshop for members on this. It is probably now about 18 months ago or so. There was a workshop that for staff and members about understanding waste in the council. So we have put some time and effort into trying to get a more detailed understanding on it. But the other point that I've written down here is it really is about behaviours. It doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter how much waste we collect if people are not going to, sort it and focus on recycling, then we are going to be at the bottom end of that pyramid. I think the arrangements that we have at the moment, and in case that they are lost, at the moment we do have low collection rates, which per head of population, sorry, that's not low, that's not but the amount of waste arisings per head of population and per household are in a good position, and we would like to stay there. So by extending and collecting more green waste and that, we're not necessarily going to benefit that. That has to be balanced with the overall environmental considerations, but certainly there would be evidence that there is good minimisation activity there. There's less data in that field as well. I also wanted to mention to members, I see that maybe the more interim follow-up that we can do on this here is to look at some more internal information. I know we have some information about our household recycling centres, how much of the material is separated and segregated there, and it's probably too early to say, but I would also like to see if I can get some maybe even route information on the waste collection to see where there is, just to highlight where the key points there and where there is areas for improvement. I've spoken to a number of the staff who work in waste collection and waste disposal, and I mean they are very passionate about this as well. They've described to me how they've approached people about their bins and about the contents of their bins, and how that where blue bins are where, you know, where nappies are being disposed in blue bins and other issues. And I have to say, it's a tough station there too, because they don't get a good response. People generally do not wish to be challenged on these type of issues. We have an education programme. It is focused on schools and community organisations. There's no doubt that it features regularly in our Inform magazine, and we do also tie into a number of the Northern Ireland-wide education and communications around that. I do think that we can continue to refresh that and refocus it and to work. But I think it was Councillor Maguire did hit onto it. This is about behaviours. It's about people's behaviours, and that is the area that we actually do need to focus on trying to get improvement on, to be able to allow us to recycle more, which I think is where everyone wants to be. So in terms of reports back, certainly those will come. I would like to see the 2021 figures. I think there's more internal analysis that can be done that can help to inform our overall waste management. A number of issues there, and we'll certainly take them on board and work through them.
Yeah, thank you for that, Celine. Councillor Kelly, Podrigan.
Thanks, Garvin, and thanks, Celine, for the report. I might have to declare an interest here at what I'm going to say. As a teacher, I'm thinking that, I'd like to propose actually that we as a council work with the relevant Education Authority and CCMS and any other relevant bodies to promote the importance of recycling in schools in our district. I took part in the Democracy Day last February, and I know the young people there told me that some of the schools, I took part in the OMA end, didn't have recycling bins or anything within the classroom, so therefore they weren't promoted to, they weren't advised, or recycling wasn't promoted in the school, and this was something that they felt strong about. So I'd like to propose that we as a council work with the relevant authorities and indeed the local schools, particularly post-primary schools where people bring in their own water bottles and other plastics. So that's just something that I'd like to propose, Garvin.
Yep.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Podrigan. Councillor Garrity.
Thank you, Chair. An excellent proposal. Happy to second Podrigan's proposal there, Chair, to help you move on.
Yep.
Thank you.
Would you like to second the note of the report also?
Certainly would, and to thank
Yep.
Celine for it. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's perfect. That's that covered. Just bear with me 1 second, members. Okay, members, could I get a proposer and seconder just extend for half an hour? Because I'm sure we'll get this business done, no problem. Councillor Michael Duff.
Anthony.
Okay, proposed by Anthony, Councillor Feely, second by Councillor Michael Duff. Okay, thank you, members. Okay, now moving on to item 7, correspondence. Hand over to Celine for these, please.
Okay, Chair. The first item of correspondence is from the Department of Infrastructure regarding proposed disabled persons parking bay at MacIver Villas in Omagh. And that is for information.
Okay.
And a map is attached there as well.
Okay, members, could I, Councillor Michael Duff? Councillor Michael Duff? That off from previous. I'll move on to Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, welcome this decision by the FA and have formally proposed it, Chair. Happy to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and happy to second the noting of it, and I welcome the disabled parking bay at MacIver Villas. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Deehan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, just to support and welcome this provision, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Michael Duff, do you still want to come in there? Yeah, that must be up from previous. So moving on. So that's proposed and seconded. So moving on, Celine, please.
Item 7.2 is 2 items of correspondence from BT about removal of public payphone services. The first one is in relation to Stone Park Cross Roads and outside and that has been, it's proposed that will be requested that it's been adopted by a registered charity there. And the second one then is at Main Street, Brookborough, and apologies again there. Yeah, and that is being Nutfield Road. I'm not sure where Nutfield Road is. That reads right. But again, those are for information and asking the council. Well, we've been asked not to raise any objections so the charity can adopt the telephone kiosk in both instances.
Thank you for that, Celine. Councillor Warrington.
Yeah, I've noticed this. Obviously, it's in my area, Brookborough, and I certainly done a wee bit of investigation on it, and it is charities that is benefiting from this. Obviously, phone boxes are not used to the degree that they were, and they're certainly, I would say, they're more open to being vandalized and abused, as opposed to actually being any real benefit in the area. So I would propose the noting of these two letters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Warrington. Councillor McAleer.
Just a comment. Obviously, as Victor says, it's not my area, but and it's interesting that it is for charity, but it's the reference, I suppose, to the nearest alternative phone being out on Main Street 5 miles down, and just sort of querying the distance, that it seems like a bit of a distance or a bit of a hike if the need for a telephone. But listening to Victor there, hopefully the mobile phone reception, etc., it's good down around that part of the country. I'm happy to let the local councillors make the call on this one. I support that, Chair. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Councillor Robinson.
I was going to second it, so.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. We'll take you a seconder, Councillor Robinson, and moving on, Celine.
7.3 is correspondence from the Department of Education regarding drop-off parking at St Bridget's Primary School, Altamuskin. And this is stemming from correspondence from the council in relation to this. They're pointing in the direction that an application for minor works should be submitted by the school if they feel that this is an inescapable health and safety issue. So they're proposing to issue the application to the school, and I suppose we can communicate that to them as well.
Thank you, Celine. Councillor Gardaí.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm just happy to propose to note this at his procedure to put it through as to the department as a programme of works, and it'll be submitted. And I'm delighted that the form is going to be forwarded on to the school so they can make an official application, get that carried out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gardaí. Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, Chair, having raised this point, it's great to see it being addressed. So happy enough to second the noting of the letter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McAleer. Councillor Donnelly. Sean Donnelly.
Thank you, Chair. Just to welcome the decision on the letter, and I know they're very, very hopeful about that over there. Okay, thank you very much.
Perfect.
Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Donnelly. And we've no other correspondence, is that correct, Celine?
There's one item of
All right.
correspondence just has been received just since the original agenda was posted just in the last day or so, and that is from the Department of Infrastructure. It's 7.4 on your decision time, and this is again an issue raised previously by members around traffic calming at St Bridget's School, Altamuskin, and the request, I think, was to increase the, to reduce the speed limits around that, and they are looking at that, I suppose, generally, and that will be considered by the Western Division of the traffic management teams. They're saying that traffic calming measures are not considered appropriate because of where the school is located, but they are willing to provide advice again on this of the parking facility. And I suppose to finish on a positive note, they are confirming that the road drainage system at the school has been cleaned and is functioning effectively.
Thank you for that, Celine. Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, again, having proposed this, is good to see a response, but I would just note in relation to the traffic survey that I don't know if we have a date or a timeline of when that'll be carried out, because having been talking to the staff and aware that the school is closed this current week. Obviously, if they were out, the school traffic won't be there, so it'll skew whatever results that they have. But no, great to see it being addressed, and happy to propose the noting in relation to that, Chair.
That's perfect. Thank you, Councillor McAleer and Councillor Garrity.
Second, Chair, thank you.
That's perfect. Thank you. Councillor Donnelly looking in, Sean.
Same as that there, happy to second that, or it has been seconded.
Yeah.
Yes, all of the MP was working on it as well. So thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you, Councillor Donnelly. Okay, members, that's all the correspondence, and moving on to any urgent and relevant business. I have one councillor like to raise a couple of issues. Councillor McElduff, please. Okay, Councillor McElduff.
All right.
Councillor McElduff. Are you there, Councillor McElduff?
Doesn't appear to be, Chair. It's 10 past 10 almost, through the Chair.
I'm aware of the two issues that Councillor McElduff had raised.
Sorry.
And there he is. Now,
Sorry,
so-
Selena, got distracted there with a phone call. Oh, do you know what I mean? Did you ever get a phone call when you didn't want it?
All the time.
And thanks for your forbearance and patience. I'll be brief. My two issues. One is possible improvements to the dog park in Oma, the one that I'm most familiar with. And again, dog owners are appreciative of the council investment in the dog parks, but it's just possible improvements. And it did pass till Celine a list of desired improvements that dog owners would like. Improved entrance to protect grass, perhaps stone the small area at the entrance out to about 10 meters, an additional gate, water stations. I'm not sure how, it's what they want, the dog owners, and additional waste bins. There's a number of proposed improvements. So that's my first item, Chair. And my second item would be the railway sleepers, the sleepers at the Coach Inn, near the Coach Inn, where the Oma Railway Tragedy Monument is located, just where James Street runs into the Dromore Road. And local heritage enthusiasts who are behind that would like some support from the council to maintain and maybe replace those sleepers, over a period of time as soon as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, Chairman, happy to support Councillor McAduff on those two issues, and especially with regard to the railway issue as well. It's very, very important. Happy to support Councillor McAduff on that one. Thank you.
Okay, that's perfect.
Thank you.
Do you want to come in there,
Chair,
Celine?
yes, if I can just make a response. I know that you have received a number of representations from dog owners, as have I, and possibly some other officers as well. So just to give an update on that, we are arranging for some hardcore to be spread at the entrance to both the large and small dog parks, extending beyond the concrete entrance area that's where, there's an area that the ground has muddied over the winter months. This is the dog parks in Arleston Park in Oma. Stone plinths have been installed for the benches, and the benches themselves will imminently be placed there. I've checked back, and the request for on-site water was first made to council in December 2020. Since then, an application, and that would have been ratified in January 21. Since then, an application has been made to Northern Ireland Water to access the mains water on the Old Mountfield Road. And once this is fully approved, and we're waiting for that approval, a contractor will be appointed to pipe the water through the park area down to the entrance to the dog park. It is likely that there will be some disruption to the park whilst that happens, so that's just advance notice to the dog owners on that, and indeed it may be necessary to close the park for safety reasons for a few days. And just for members' information, and I think this was reported before, it's estimated that the cost of installing the water at that location is going to be in the region of £15,000 to £20,000, and it will also unfortunately necessitate work on the newly resurfaced Old Mountfield Road. So I think that's probably going to be the first cut on that road. We have looked at other options, but with the metering requirements and the need for fresh water, this needs to be taken from the public water supply, and that's why it has to come through from there. I've already mentioned there those the dog parks, which are quite large and spacious even by comparison to the Enniskillen Town Dog Park. Those are sited within the environs of Arleston Park, and that means that the council is obliged to consider the requirements of managing the park in terms of biodiversity and also the environmental considerations, and that does place some constraints and limitations on what we do. We will assess the need for an additional entrance to the dog park, but I would highlight that this would be limited to the large dog park area. The current entrances are approximately 75 and 85 metres from the old Mountfield Road area, and there's no formal car parking in that area, only the Gibson School lay-by. So again, just a bit of concern that could create further issues. As I've explained, we will install seating, but there won't be, we won't be able to provide formal shelter provision, as again that wouldn't be in keeping with the overall park. So it's another one of these where we may have to accept the weather conditions prevailing. There is likely to be some ongoing planting in the wider area of the park as part of the park management, as I've said, but this would be limited to perimeter areas only in the dog park area. And we've already touched earlier in the meeting on the issue of additional dog fouling bins, and we are now advising dog owners to use the standard bins for disposal purposes as well, because the capacity of the dog fouling bins is not sufficient. There's a large standard bin on the parkside entrance to the dog parks, and another one will be installed then close to the old Mountfield Road entrance whenever those dog fouling bins are removed. So I suppose it is good to get this feedback. The dog park was established following an extensive consultation exercise, and that was open to the public for comment. This has come a little bit later, but we do acknowledge the feedback and commentary, and we'll work to take these issues forward over the coming weeks and months.
That's perfect. Thank you, Celine. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, I think Celine's last comment kind of to the punch here. I think from what Councillor Michael Duff was suggesting, it was pretty much a sort of, begin talk on. I don't know if Councillor Thompson did second it. If he didn't, I'm happy to give that if there's a seconder even required. But no, I think the dog park is actually something that's nearly a victim of its own success in that. I don't know when it was sort of first created, if we kind of fully appreciated how successful it would be. Certainly my dog enjoys the runs it gets round it, but things such as like the sort of the wear on the grass at the entrance is probably just a symptom of how well it's been used. So I think it's certainly a success story, and I'm happy enough to support any sort of work for the future, and I think that's probably what Celine is proposing. So thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Smith. I'll just bring John in on the second issue of Councillor McAuliffe. Is that correct?
Yeah. Sorry, Chair. If I could confirm that I did second it and support it.
Yes, you did. Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Yes, Chair, just very, very briefly, and just for Councillor McAuliffe, I've just been looking at this, and maybe it is something that we could maybe work with the group in applying for funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund as part maybe of a wider railways project. I know it has been mentioned a number of times about the railways project in Oman. It is something that we could maybe work with the group in trying to get funding for the railway sleepers issue. So if I can give an undertaking that we will work with the group in trying to forward that.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, John. Okay, members, that's that item, David, and I've been advised that there's no need to go into confidential because there is no matters arising. So that brings this meeting, and this is my final meeting in this chair of this committee. So I'd just like to thank you, members and officers, also for your support and cooperation throughout the last year. So thank you all very much and have a good evening.
Well done, Gervin. You're a good chair.
Thank you very much.
Well done, Chair.
Well done, Chair. Well done.